The Michael Waddell podcast is presented by Spandau Arms in partnership with Folds of Honor and Spartan Magnaswitch System. Be sure to like and subscribe anywhere you get your podcasts.
I think we're put here on earth to do what he wants us to do, to love what we love to do, and bring a message about it. And people have been gathering around fire for thousands and thousands of years, and then there was one caveman that was smarter than the rest of them. He said, let's just throw it on the fire and see what happens. You know?
Right. Kent, man, it is so good to sit down with you, buddy. I've been excited about this one because I do a lot of cooking on cast iron, and plus love the cowboy tradition. And even my wife, she was watching your videos last night. She said, Kent Rollins is coming to the house. Man, I got to get some recipes.
Well, we're honored to be here, Mike. Thank you so much for having us. You know, me and you, I think, sort of cut from the same cloth. Pretty old-fashioned, you know, like things simple. Don't take much to get us excited. And it's just sort of like living the dream every day. Yes, sir,
it is. And that's exactly what I thought, man. I've obviously, especially when the show come to Outdoor Channel, and I started watching the Cast Iron Cowboy, I thought, man, it felt so good because it wasn't just the good food and the whole cowboy and these ranches that you was helping prepare these old-fashioned meals for, but it was also just a standpoint of slowing down and kind of going back in time and the simple things. And I definitely share that with you because obviously I grew up here in Georgia. You know, we might have had some cheese grits where y'all had a little different dish or something, or, you know, but I don't know, man. It's feels like the world we live in now is just going so fast and so crazy that I don't know. I see that Chuckwagon that you'll pull and sit down and I don't know, man. It's like, who in the world don't want to be there?
That's right.
Even the people in New York City and L.A., that's really where they want to be.
You know, we have the best view out our kitchen window every day. You know, I've been doing this for 38 years, been in country, just like you when you're hunting. I've been in country that people ain't going to find on a GPS, you know, some place that ain't on the map. And you meet some of the best people in the world because they're God-loving, country-loving people that just are carrying on a heritage and a part of history that was handed to them. And I think that's really a way that we wanted to start this show, was not really to highlight what we can cook or anything, but the heritage of different ranchers and cowboys across America. And it's keeping a story alive because an old man told me many years ago, and I firmly believe it, everybody reads a story. Don't read the story, be the story. You know,
I love that.
That's sort of what we want to get across every day in life.
That, you know, I love that, Kent, because if you think about it, we always reminisce on the past. I do all the time. I mean, my wife gets frustrated. Me and one of my buddies, Jackson Bishop, he works for us at Bone Collector. We'll get to talking about high school football.
Yeah.
You know, we'll get to talking about the way it was. Or my dad, who's now 72, we're always talking about, you know, Uncle Bud and Uncle George and Papa Waddell, his dad. And then sometimes it hits me. I'm like, man, I wish I could go back. But in reality, and especially what y'all doing, no, you're living part of the past in the present. And you're right. There's no better time than to just live it.
That's right. And you know, good Lord, I guess he gave me a talent. Sometimes I used to call it a plague, you know, but I think we're put here on earth to do what he wants us to do, to love what we love to do, and bring a message about it. And people have been gathering around fire for thousands and thousands of years. And then there was one caveman that was smarter than the rest of them. And he said, let's just throw it on the fire and see what happened. You know?
Right.
But my mother had taught me food brings people together. And the joy of cooking for me was always watching people eat it. You know, and I don't care where your kitchen table's at or what your dining room looks like. It can be in the middle of a big city or out in the middle of 700,000 acres. You know, it's a great way to break bread and bring people together.
Oh, no doubt. And that, I find it interesting too, like even your story of getting into the cooking. Obviously, you certainly have a passion for it, but you were a bull rider.
Yeah.
I mean, you've been a little bit of everything. I knew you grew up in Oklahoma, and I loved it. I loved the deer hunt in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
It's probably one of my favorite states to deer and turkey hunt in. But now I know you're residing, if I'm not wrong, in New Mexico.
Yes, sir.
But what got you into just saying, man, I tell you what, I've bull rided, I've done all this stuff, I've rodeoed, I've been the cowboy. Now I'm gonna be the cowboy who makes sure I cook for the cowboys. How did that happen?
Well, I can remember when I was young, you'd go somewhere and help a neighbor. We called it neighboring up. Nobody paid nobody. You'd go over and help them work cows. They'd come help you work cows, you know. And the camaraderie that all them old men had, who were some of the greatest cowboys I ever met in my life, I thought this is what life's about. You know, to being able to do something you love and try to do it better than anybody else, and then you ain't never really got a job. And my mother had taught me to cook when I was 8 or 9 years old, and I thought it was a great thing, especially if Daddy and them was fixing to go horseback and it was 10 degrees. In the house, it was, you know, it's pretty nice by the kitchen stove, but I didn't know I was going to have to wash dishes. You know, that was the worst part of it. So I thought, I'm going to get back in a saddle. But I'd always loved to cook, and I think really when I got started Dutch oven cooking was probably 81, long in there. I had an uncle who was raised out by Silver City, New Mexico. He was a guide in the Gila, and he knew that country better than the Forest Service and the game wardens did. And he called me and he said, I know you know how to cook. And he said, I need a cook, but he said, I know you can guide a hunter if I'll just show you the right places. And we packed in everything just like I do now. So I have a Chuckwagon now. Then it's on mules and horses, you know. And we're at Lily Mountain, Lily Park down there right on the Mogollon Rim, and it's 8,000 foot. Things don't cook right at 8,000 foot. When you come from 1,800 foot elevation and then you're at 8,000, I can remember first morning getting up about 2, making biscuits, you know, and it's about like that. And I cut them. An hour later, they're still about like that. And I'm thinking, well, they'll rise when I cook them, you know. And I cooked them, and they still about like that. One of them hunters said, is this flatbread? I said, it is today. But
It is flatbread today.
I don't know what it's going to be tomorrow. But and I'd done 5 or 6 seasons out there, you know, and I was coming home one time, and I thought, you know, I've ate off some Chuckwagons on some ranches. Wasn't the best cooks in the world, but you never complained about the cook because cook get even. You know, if the polite thing to do, and it was cowboy etiquette, you just take your plate, go around out there behind a mesquite tree and just scrape it out. You just went hungry, you know, but you never badmouthed him. And I thought, I'm just going to buy a Chuckwagon, you know, and go to cooking for ranches. And got one, and I remember the first ranch I was on, South Abilene, Texas. Cook always made twice what the cowboys made. They was making $20 a day. I was making $40. And people look at that now and they think, you weren't making no money, you know. But when you were somewhere 4 weeks and you was making $40 a day and you didn't go nowhere.
You didn't spend no money, did you?
Yeah, you thought you'd won the lottery when you got out. And I remember one of the last mornings I was in there, and we was moving camp with a team and a wagon every day, you know, to a different location, just like old Cook did going down the trail. And there's an old man come up there one morning for breakfast, old Mac, and squatted down by that fire about 2:30. And he said, Cookie, you got some coffee? I said, always got coffee, Mac. And he said, would you do this if we wasn't getting paid? I said, probably, but I said, today's the last day. Let's see if they'll pay us anyway, you know. And but that was a passion that was always there from the true old timer that I was around. It was what was in their heart. They loved to do it. Sure, you want to make a living, but I always tell people today, if you're not happy in what you're doing, your job is not work anymore. It's nearly like punishment, you know.
It's almost a prison.
Yeah,
You're right.
it is. And I get up every day, and every day's a banquet, and every meal's a holiday, and everything is just great as it can be. And word of mouth got out pretty well in the cowboy circle. One ranch would say, hey, this guy was a good cook. You need to hire him. And I could start February, 1st of March, get a TP and everything I needed, you know, which was a 7x7. And I think the longest time I ever spent in 1 year scattered out was about 200 nights in a TP.
Wow.
You know, in different places. And I remember coming in one time, my dad had died, and my mother said, did you miss me? I said, yeah, I missed you, Mama. I said, but I missed a stand-up shower, sit-down toilet, and carpet a whole lot worse, you know.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's
But
exactly.
the Cowboys respected me because I'd been on their side of the fire. I'd run the Brandon fire. I'd work cattle, you know. And when they found out, they said, this guy can't, he's a good cook, you know. And it just kept me busy. Really it was what I love to do more than anything else, to go in. And it's always a challenge being a Chuckwagon cook. You're not in a controlled environment. It's like hunting. You know, Mother Nature is the one in charge. But I always told myself, if it don't challenge you, you can never change. You've got to adapt and overcome every day. And then a lot of people say, well, they have plan A, B, and C. If you was a Chuckwagon cook, you had X, Y, and Z. You're 70 miles to the nearest grocery store. You run out of something, you know what takes its place, you know. mayonnaise will work real good in any recipe that calls for eggs, but it's hard to fry mayonnaise for breakfast. You know, it just don't work. But it's something that turned into more than I ever thought it could be. You know, we started working for Food TV way back in the early 90s. And always sort of liked TV. It was one of them deals to where I eventually learned I would rather say what I wanted to say instead of have one of them earpieces in and say, you need to say this. And I think, I ain't going to say that.
Right.
That's not what I believe, you know. So when Shannon come along and I'm blessed, Michael. I told a guy yesterday on the airplane, I outkicked my coverage when I married her, you know. It's a blessing to wake up every day and know that I have the most beautiful woman in the world and the dogs don't bite and I ain't out of firewood.
I hear that.
It's good.
Well, nobody argue about out kicking your coverage. I mean, we watch Cast Iron Cowboy, my family and I, and Shannon, no doubt, beautiful lady. And man, the camaraderie y'all have and just the teasing, I laugh even. I think it's on your Instagram where he had made this great dip. And she'd then come back and threw some black olives on it. And you'd like, no, I can't put black.
You don't put that on there. And she didn't. She come from Cowboy Country, which is northern Nevada.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
You know, but she never had been around Chuckwagon. She didn't cook, and when I used to do cooking schools a long time ago, because we didn't have no Chuckwagon cooks, you couldn't just go hire one somewhere. You know what I'm thinking? I'm just going to have people come, and I'd do 4-day schools. It'd last. You know, we'd get up in the morning, 3 o'clock, go to cook, and you'd cook till it got dark. Mm-hmm. And she asked me one time, I met her in Elko. I was they have a national cowboy poetry gathering, and I was up there entertaining and doing a workshop. She was in charge of the workshop. She said, so how do you advertise? I said, word of mouth and a full stomach. And she said, you got an email address? She said, I'd like to send you some stuff. I said, Route 1, Box 318. She said, that ain't it.
That ain't it.
I said, that's all
Not
I got.
.com. Yeah.
But she come to cooking school to take some pictures to build a website. I told her, I don't own a computer. You know, She said, well, this will help you. And then she come back to cooking school again, and then she come again. And then I had to marry her so she could graduate, and now she runs a business. So it's good.
You did right. That might be the smartest thing you did.
But
now she runs the computers and this stuff. Yeah.
She's a great Dutch oven cook. I taught her the way that nobody taught me to bake in a Dutch oven. It was always trial and error. Mm-hmm. You know, you figure out pretty quick what works, what don't work, you know, and I'd tell her, I'd say, this is what you do if this ain't working. Mm-hmm. This is a different wood we're going to use today. And if I had to say I'm going to walk off from that wagon and leave it with somebody that I know can cook like I do, run it like I want it run, it'd be her. You know,
she can do it.
She's tough. I don't know.
That is awesome. And here too, that's pretty cool how you started really your cooking career as far as cooking for people as double duty, being an elk guide and cook, which is, man, you talking about some long days.
Oh.
Every place I've ever been where
cooks up
whoever,
first.
whether it's your buddy who's a good cook or whoever's kind of in charge of the food, that's the first one up. Get some coffee brewing. Start some biscuits, or, you know, whether you're out in a tent or even in some of the lodges. Yeah. I mean, holy cow. But I can't imagine running 7, 8, 10 miles a day, running people around, and then people still come back like, what we eating? You right back at it. Yeah.
We tried to take hunters when we was out there to Gila to the furthest point we could from any direction, you know, which was 24 miles in from nearly any side. And we'd tell people, you know, you need to be in shape. You need to know how to ride. And I can't remember where this little woman was from. Her name was Wanda. She's from Georgia. And when they'd pull up to the trailhead, Uncle was very notoriously known to pick them. Whichever one he thought might be the best, most in shape, he'd get. If one was out of shape or he thought might be trouble, that was yours, you know.
Yep, I know what you mean. Yep.
And he'd ride off and leave you with them. You know? And Wanda was about 4'9", and I got the littlest mule I could find, got the littlest saddle that we had put on there, and we was getting ready to go. And she said, "How far is this?" I said, "About 22 miles, Wanda." Ooh. And she said, "I'll make it." Well, we've been about 4 miles, and it's just up one, down a switchback, up another, you know. And I was pulling 6 mules behind me, and then she was there, and she finally just trotted up there beside me and she said, I cannot do this. And I said, what are you talking about? She said, this saddle is beating me to death because we took the stirrups up first, they'd go. She said, but don't worry about me. She said, I also run marathons. She said, so I'll just run along beside you. And I looked at her and I said, ma'am, we still lack about 20 miles. And she said, don't worry, I'll be there. And every time I looked back, she was just trotting. And I got up there to camp.
Holy cow.
Uncle and her husband was sitting over there. He looked at me, he said, you finna start supper? I said, here pretty quick. And I said, one thing about it, I said, my hunter would be so sore in the morning. I said, after breakfast, I can take me a nap.
That's right,
and,
right.
Wanda was up at 2:30 the next morning helping me make breakfast, ready to go.
So tough as a lighter stump,
yeah,
I mean.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
She was good. But it was always a little something different out there. And you know what it is to hunt. I mean, we'd tell them, we're not going to ride out in the dark.
Mm-hmm.
We done rode by probably the biggest bull you'll ever see in the dark.
Right.
We'll wait till it first gets light. We know this country. We'll get where we need to be. And but you meet so many good people through that too, just like you do cooking for cowboys or anything else. But I just love to sit down and hear people's story,
yes.
at night. What do y'all do for a living? What got you into hunting? And so many good people. And that's the way it was with cooking school when I was teaching people to cook. I'd have people from all over, had them from overseas, and the dream and the fascination of just trying something like a cowboy. Because it was an American icon for so many around the world. And so that was maybe out of the first 15 that come to school in the first 5 years, 3 bought wagons, 2 made a cook, But I still hear from them, and if you can influence somebody's life a little bit like that, and you do it every week with that TV show you got, and we live in the dream.
We're going to stop for a quick break, but please don't go anywhere. We got so much to come.
Spandau Arms was founded with a simple idea. The best part of hunting isn't the gear, it's the memories. From the first rooster rise of the season in the tall grass to the last second opportunity on the target buck as sunset closes in. Spandau believes firearms should be built to perform, priced to be accessible, and designed to become an essential piece of your hunting story. Their lineup includes field-ready shotguns and precision-driven rifles built for hunters, competitors, and recreational shooters who know that quality and dependability matter more than the hype. Born from the experience of American hunters and crafted by generations of gunmakers, each Spandau firearm is built for real-world performance in the moments that matter. A wingman flies close with unwavering dedication. At Folds of Honor, a wingman stands with families of America's fallen or disabled heroes. The burial flag given to their grieving family is folded 13 times. As a wingman, your $13 monthly donation provides scholarships to their spouses and children. 13 folds, $13. Become a wingman. Join today at foldsofhonor.org.
Amen. You ain't lying, Kent. It really is amazing when you think about, what we have here in America. And, even when we first started talking, you was talking about that old timer told you, don't just think about it, live it.
Yeah.
And sometimes for me, I get a little bit frustrated. I have a lot of friends, some younger, some older, some are my mentors, and a lot of them. And I think it was Cameron Hames that is always kind of on social media talking about this. You get it must be nice. And they say it sometimes with resentment, oh, must be nice, Kent. You ride around with your beautiful wife and cook and build fires and talk philosophy and do your cowboy poetry and all this stuff. And, I'm over here doing this or that. And a lot of times it hits me as like, well, we've all done so many things that we liked and some that we weren't satisfied.
Yeah.
I feel like, we were both raised that you're going to work. I'm not saying that even if you don't like what you're doing. I remember my dad was a contractor, and I remember every once in a while we'd have to hang sheetrock. And let me tell you something.
That's some work.
I don't.
Especially up here.
I don't mind a bit getting up to guide an elk hunter at 4 a.m. or getting up and taking a team up through the mountains, mules and horses to guide elk hunters. If you were to spend a month hanging sheetrock,
yes,
and some people might think sheetrock's easier than what we do, but at the end of the day, I've just always thought, and I'm always challenging, men and even the ladies sometimes, like, look, make a change, start living your life. You only get so much time on this earth. Good Lord's only going to give us so much, which, is arguable, as we're probably going to have a lot better time when we leave this earth than when we're on this earth. But there's nothing saying you can't make as much joy as you can with living your life and having a purpose, and to see, a family like yours, you and your wife, and what you've done. I mean, holy cow. I mean, the cool thing about podcasts, we can talk about these stories just like you talk about around a campfire. But I would imagine if we started from the time you're 14 or 15 and went to now, man, it'd be probably 5 hours. The things you've seen, I mean, from rodeos to the ranch. And like I said, it's unique what you've experienced from, you're a cowboy, you've done all this, you've worked cattle, you've lived this, you've eaten from a chuck wagon, but then how now you run the chuck wagons in so many cases and feed cowboys. But like I said, I imagine that's cool for them because, like you said, you're from the same cloth. It's not like you got some slicker out there trying to put some French cuisine to them. You're cooking taters and meat and stuff they like, and the bread puddings. And and I was going to say, I don't think them cowboys are too worried about everything got to be just perfect and how much sugar you put in it. They ready to eat.
They're ready to eat. I told a guy one time, and he was one of them deals to where it's sort of like, you had it easy. I said, had it easy.
I get that a lot.
I said, when was it easy? I'd like, take me back to that time when it was easy. I can remember going to school with one brother's boot on one foot and one brother's boot on the other foot because mine had holes in them. Mm-hmm. We grew up poor as dirt. My mother made sure we didn't starve, and my dad made sure we knew how to sweat. And I told him, I said, I took a chance. You're going to throw, why sit somewhere in life and have a loop built and never throw it?
Yes.
You might miss, but at least you got the chance. I said, you're afraid to take that chance. I said, I turned down a full-time job, insurance, retirement, vacation, everything in the world to do what I want to do. And I said, people call me a fool. People call me stupid. And I said, I don't want to look back and say, shoulda, coulda, woulda, what if?
Amen to that.
I said, you have to step out in life. If God has something he wants you to do and you pray about it and you put your heart into it and you give him the glory for it, you go as far as you want to go in life. But so many people, instead of getting a pat on the back, they think somebody's got them by the collar holding them back. They don't want to step out there. And I've never had pity for me, or I don't want to be self-centered. I will never be as good as I think I can be because you always strive to be better. If you think you've reached to the top of the ladder and you don't reach no more, you'll fall off of it.
I love that sentiment. Kent, you don't even know how happy that makes me here to say that, or you to say that, because that is one thing I found with successful people, men and women. There's a part of peace that they have in their satisfaction of what they're doing, but they're really never satisfied. They get more uncomfortable when they become comfortable. Yeah. Like when you finally make the perfect pan of biscuits in your case, or calling an elk for somebody, like, man, I said everything's sexy and that old bull just come running. Yeah. It seems like people like us to sit back and say, you know what, but I should have went a little more east. I think I could have made that bull stop at 15 yards. He ended up at 14. It's like, and you know what? I cooked them biscuits too early. I feel like they wasn't as hot as they should have been for them cowboys when they come in. And every person I know that feels that way, or that has a little bit of, hey, man, if I stay the same, I get worse. It seems like they keep thriving and they keep finding more joy. And you would think it'd be the opposite. Yeah. And it seems to me, too, as we're getting deep, it's like a campfire around what we're doing. But I noticed everything that happened even after this Charlie Kirk situation, and then you see let's face it, a lot of the left leaning radical liberal agenda, it's like the number one thing or two main things I noticed this remove from their soul is, one, the good Lord. Number two is any accountability. They hate accountability and the truth. And so the truth is what you're saying is the truth. Yeah. It's not arrogant. It's not overconfident. It's because you live that life. Yeah. Let's take a gamble. I can work this job and no doubt probably have a good life. I could go this route, possibly lose everything because I only got this percentage to make it. Yeah. You know, with the good Lord behind you, got 100% to make it. But that's what I always think is like, if you got a 10 or 20% chance to make something happen and you try to make it happen, well, if you really do the math, and I don't think me and you would be the ones that was probably the A student in algebra, geometry, but common sense cowboy logic. Yeah. I remember always thinking, even in schools, like, well, if I got a 10% to make it, let's just say doing what I'm doing, working in the outdoor industry, you know, in my mind, all I want to be is a guide or just be around it, be a cameraman. Maybe I could get behind the scenes. Maybe I could be a guide or be an apprentice to you and help feed the hunters or the cowboys. I thought, well, if I got a 10% making at that, then I should have, according to my rudimentary math, a 90% making it in the other world. Yeah. So why don't I go for the 10%? Yeah. And then I got a 90% chance of making it. At least I can say I tried. And I don't understand for the life of me why more people, like you said, why they feel like that somebody's got their collar. The only person who's got it is you. Yeah. And that person's, you know, staring at you in the mirror so many times. And so to hear your story is just, it's very inspiring to be able to do that. And so many times I think the good Lord puts you in those places because it ain't just to feed them some biscuits and some taters and gravy. It's that campfire sitting around sometimes these young cowboys, or maybe it's somebody that come from the city, and you being able to look them right in the eye and like look around you. Yeah. Look at this sunrise, look at this sunset, and I always tell people, they leave thinking, you know,
sometimes you're the only Jesus people ever gonna see.
That's true.
You know, and I'm a big a sinner as anybody in the world.
Me too.
But we have a job while we're here. He wouldn't put us here to be nothing. He didn't make mistakes. You know, we need to live up to his expectations also. But I did an interview not long ago with a lady out of Chicago, and I'm always amazed, Mike. And I love to BS people, you know, just see what's going to happen. Me too. And this lady said, well, thank you for taking time. She said, but, you know, your kind of people. I said, hold on a minute, ma'am. I said, what is my kind of people, sugar? And she said, well, you know, you're the people that your hands are always dirty. You're not real clean. You know, especially being in the food industry. She said, I'm sure that your hands touch stuff that's probably not really good for food. I said, hang on a minute there, sugar. I said, you know, life is simple. People complicate it with everything in the world, but I don't complicate it with food. I said, I don't know you, but I said, just by the reading that you're giving me here with your vibrations, darling, on the telephone, I said, you're working in a little 8x8 cubicle. You don't hardly ever get to look out the window. You don't eat beef, and you're a vegetarian. I said, I'm pretty close to right, and she just hung up.
There is the truth and accountability you put right in front of her.
But it's, you know, our kind of people. My dad and them went through the Dust Bowl, the Great Depression, and Shan told me when we got together, she said, you have Dust Bowl mentality. I said, thank you. I said, what have I taught you? She said, the glass is always half full, every day. I said, yeah, and it never runs dry. Mm-hmm. I said, my dad would tell me that going through the Dust Bowl and the Depression, he said it was some of the hardest times they'd ever been through in life, but it just wasn't affecting one family. He said, everybody had it. And he said, in them smaller rural communities, he said, people bonded together even stronger than they ever have in life. And he said, a lot of them didn't make it. And he said, a lot of them moved, went to California. He said, but for those of us who stayed, he said, we found out what true grit was. Mm-hmm. And he said, because we had it in our mouth, we had it in our eyes, we had it in our ears. But he said it made us stronger people because he said, we were showed just a little bit of how it could be if you had nothing.
Wow. You know? That is amazing sentiment. And it's you know, talking about the Dust Bowl. And then if you dig deep into the, you know, Great Depression, in so many different tough times. And really, I think the closest that we saw and modern, which certainly seemed like some type of odd warfare in this COVID situation. It's amazing how much tragedy it brings, but it's also amazing how much resilience and a certain amount of, I hate to use the word joy because sometimes people think that and like, well, there's nothing joyous about disease or Dust Bowl or Great Depression. But, you know, you look back in the Great Depression, some of the best music was made.
Oh, yes.
I mean, you got these fathers who were absent from the home making a living. So, I mean, even though it's way back when, you know, obviously even in the Dust Bowl, when you still think of simple life, people farming and doing those things. But, I mean, Dad worked from daylight to dark. I mean, it wasn't like they was out there throwing the baseball and football with their youngins. You know, Mama was cooking and taking care of the things. But all of a sudden, life changes. Guess who's home? The whole family unit. Whole family. So you're leaning on each other. You don't have the luxuries you might have had, but in one way, the luxuries you lost, you gained another luxury. Yeah. And it was, you know, in the Great Depression, you find some of the best music. Moms and dads and uncles and granddaddies and grandmoms sitting around the porch, and all you had was a 6-string guitar, and maybe Uncle George had a harmonica. Yeah. You know, didn't have nothing to eat. So, you know, you were singing the blues. Yeah. But it's amazing.
It brought families together.
Yeah, it did.
And, you know, COVID did that in a way.
Yeah.
I always told people, I said, you know, there's so many times you go somewhere, a restaurant, or we go see somebody, there was more phones sitting at the table than there was forks. You know, people just got too occupied. But when COVID had everybody sort of brought together, we had launched our second cookbook one day before they shut the country down for COVID. Mm-hmm. And I thought, this will be a wreck because we had 7 weeks of book tour, you know. It was a blessing.
Right.
Our YouTube channel numbers grew 60% in 2 weeks. Cookbook sales were out of sight. And people would say, you got us through COVID because we learned to cook basic, simple stuff, you know. And there's a blessing in everything. Sure, COVID was bad. People lost loved ones. They did. And my heart goes out for them. But there's always was taught something in life that's hard is going to teach you a lesson. You know?
Right.
Used to be Sunday afternoon entertainment for a bunch of old men. They'd put us young kids on some bronchi colts that never had been rode, and see how many times you could get bucked off. They thought it was fun, you know. And my dad said, it's going to teach you to be tough. And I said, well, I don't know about that, you know.
Right.
But there's always, and I think you feel this way, Mike, there's a silver lining somewhere.
Always.
You peel it back just a little, you'll find it.
Always. My papa used to say all the time, to the point when I was a kid, and he passed away when I was 12, but I remember it well. He'd always say, no matter where you at, you know, I'd come from football practice and I'd run down to my papa's and I'd be like, Papa, I don't like football, man. I'm getting hit hard and it's hot. And he said, boy, it can always be worse. And he would that was his answer, you know, and I loved everything about my papa. Now my dad, that's his favorite saying, it can always get worse, you know, something bad happens. But when you think about it, it really can. And even in that worst moment, when you see a little shining light, it makes you go to it. And some people, I feel like, have just gotten or are weak to just giving up. Yeah. And I've learned if you just keep going, you certainly get tougher. You know, it's like I love trees. Like I'm always looking this time of year, I'm looking for acorns that's dropping. And I always find if you go into the forest anywhere in the country, you know, you can find where that cold wind blows, that north side of that tree's got a little thicker bark. Yeah. Every time. It's done got tough and resilient. It's the healthiest part of the tree. Yeah. It's the thickest part of that tree. And it's typically full foliage on one side during the summer, and you can always tell, even down here in the south, the north side of that tree where that cold wind blows. And so I think humans, we have that same nature. We just become tougher, and I think the good Lord puts you through some fire purposely. I mean, even the heart of steel, I mean, it comes to a point of just before melting, and then when it cools off, that sucker right there, son, you can't hardly sharpen that knife blade, you know. So, no, I totally agree with you on that, and you see that all the time, to where if you just sit still and give up and just flop around on the ground, man, you're probably going to rot right into the leaves. But if you get up, I feel like you got a chance to get onto the top of the mountain for sure.
It's it's one thing, and I think for people to say, well, that was just too hard. I couldn't get it done. Well, I was brought up this way and still instilled today. That's hard. I may not accomplish it today. I'm going to kick its butt tomorrow.
Yes.
I'm going to do all I can do to get there, and it's, being a chuckwagon cook never was easy. Everything's heavy. Everything's hot. I've had a heat stroke from cooking in 98. They told me you'll never cook again. I said, we don't use that word. And had frostbite. But when you reach that point, and I think it's like you said, God is giving you a test to say, with me looking out for you and you believing in me, I can get you through anything. Though I walk through the valley of death.
Yes.
I will fear no evil. And we've all got to be molded. Some of us just take a whole lot more hammering. My head was pretty hard. I had to get hammered on a lot.
Mine too. Mine too. It is crazy too. Ken, what do you think? Because I know this is something that you're talking around the fire and you're talking to people and you meet everybody. What is it that some people just don't want to gamble and truly believe in themselves? And a lot of people would take that as those of us that do, well, maybe we're overconfident, possibly arrogant. But in that mentality, all the people I've met that strive to walk through these uncomfortable situations or take a gamble on themselves or their family. In your case, you and your wife in this business of selling cookbooks and spices, which by the way, I got some of your spices on order, man. I can't wait to put. I love cooking. I just ain't that good at it. And then my wife, she can throw down. She's a good cook. But I've often wondered. I don't understand why people don't believe more in themselves, because I think more than I see not have an opportunity to truly find everything they want if they truly just believe in themselves. And I mean, what's your take? Why do you think we're in a place to where more people seem to not believe in themselves in certain situations?
I'll this is a big word for me, Mike, paraphrase it in a way that there's three horses. There's doubt, there's fright, and there's I ain't. People think they're comfortable in life doing something, but they're always wishing they had a rearview mirror that would show you what's ahead of you instead of what's behind you, I think the biggest thing is faith. Mm-hmm. You've got to have that faith to make that first initial step up into that stirrup. I don't care if it's getting in your pickup and you're going to drive for the first time of your life, riding a tricycle when you're 2 years old. There's always that little doubt of unknown fear. And when I was riding bulls when I first started, and my brother, an older brother would try to kill a younger brother off at any time in his life,
Yes.
And he would tie my legs underneath a steer or an old cow to practice. I said, well, I need a bull rope. No, you can learn to ride with your knees,
Hold on with your knees.
Yeah. He said, you'll learn. Well, after you got kicked in the back of the head 6 or 7 times, really what I learned was don't trust my brother no more, But if you can overcome the fear to get up in there, but you have to believe in yourself. You can't have that doubt that you think, well, I ain't never going to get this done. Can't make it. Nobody believes in me. I have no support system. And we have so many people that reach out through us through YouTube that tell us, hey, I'm having a bad day, because we tell them, holler at us. If we can't lift each other up, we can't help each other, what are we here? And I'll say, you're not alone in life. Number one, God is with you. Mm-hmm. Number two, you're part of our family now, because you've done commented. Now I have to take you into my heart. You're part of my people. Mm-hmm. I said, we believe in you. And I'll hear from them 3 or 4 weeks later. They'll send an email to Shan or something. They'll say, thank you. I finally did get that done. But I wish people would, pardon me, as my dad would say, had the gumption.
Yep, gumption.
To just go ahead and sit in that saddle I don't care what it is. If you're a carpenter, a well driller, windmill man, a dentist, a doctor, a baker, a plumber, do it better than anybody else has ever done it. You got to believe, first of all, in God, then believe in yourself. Because, like I said a while ago, He don't make mistakes. He puts you here for a reason. And you got to ask yourself, am I walking down the right road? You know, and it's not supposed to be easy. If it was easy, everybody in the world would do it.
Right.
You know? And I don't think it's easy.
You're nailing it. I mean, because I believe exactly in what you're saying, because nothing's easy. But the old saying, anything that comes easy might not be worth it.
Yeah.
Or the whole too good to be true.
Yeah.
I believe that to be the case. Now, I can go back and look. There has been some things that's too good to be true that's happened, and I'm still like, this is weird. I'm looking back like, I can't even believe this happened. This is too good to be true. But so many of those cases, if it felt too good to be true, there was a scam, there was a shyster. But everything that I've got up and put my mind to, you know, I used something simple as turkey calling. I was infatuated with turkey calling. I remember literally staying up to 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, cutting, you know, latex and prophylactics, trying to build turkey calls, because I got obsessed with wanting to be good. Didn't even know I was going to start competing. And I tell the story. We used to go to the gas stations back in those days, me and a guy named Ricky Joe Bishop, and you couldn't go online, you know, to Amazon or wherever and just buy turkey call frames and or these different latexes and rubbers to make elk calls or turkey calls. And I remember we would just go and buy those little old cheap condoms out of the store. Like literally we'd come back and just have, probably people thought we were some weird perverts. I don't know what they thought. We'd have all kind of different things. And I remember the first time I ever placed big, I think I got third place in a world championship. And I had a glow in the dark condom rubber that I had cut up and made me a cutter call. But I remember just being staying up and looking and it might be a school, I'd go school. And my dad never complained. My mom had passed away when I was young, so I'd just be up there turkey calling all night, even in the fall. So is there anything important? Am I patting myself on the back? No, because I'm not. But there wasn't a thought process other than being obsessed with trying to be as good as I could be. And it almost like taught me something later that, man, if you really want to do something, I mean, I think sometimes the good Lord will show you. Like, I'm sure there's somebody that's a broken up bull rider and, you know, they didn't got up middle age and finally they realized, like, you know what? I don't think I was ever that good of a bull rider. I had the faith. I had the courage, but I think I've rode 7 bulls in my life on the buzzer, and I've maybe rode hundreds and hundreds of bulls. And this is why I got broke legs. Maybe I probably should have been a dentist. I don't know. I'm sure that's out there. So I think the good Lord can correct you, or you have to listen. Cause I know people in Nashville that are singing their butts off, and they're going to be the next Blake Shelton or Luke Bryan or whoever. And then I'm sitting there listening to them like, well, now one problem is you can't sing, you know, it's like, or somebody's cooking somewhere. It's like, I love your passion, but these are the worst biscuits I've ever had. Like, it takes flour and water, but I am convinced if you put your mind to something and don't give up, that you can find success. And what is that rank on that success? And I think it breaks my heart. And I didn't see this when I was younger, and now I'm 52, but now I see it more because I've said this in many podcasts. Like, I'm like you, when people comment, or especially I get to meet people in person, man, I'm a man hugger. Ain't nothing gay about me in the world, but dude, if I see another grown man and they got calloused hands, or I don't care what they do, man, I'm shaking hand. I hug your neck, man, because I always say you never know what somebody's going through, and most all of us are going through a lot. And but what breaks my heart the most is sometimes people, I can tell they stuck in a situation. They hate their job. They're not in a good position. And it's not really when you find people that are maybe don't have the financial means. I've also met some people that are doing what they love, and they ain't got a pot to piss in, and they full of joy. They got the Lord's Spirit in them, and they're happy. And then vice versa, I know some people that have all the money, but you can tell they're kind of lost in this abyss. And so there's that place in the middle. And a lot of times I think it comes from just saying, what is it do I want? What is going to be my purpose? And listening to that spirit. And I think there is. And there's a lot of people that say, oh man, they're just preaching to me. No, I think I've seen it, but it comes from the simple lifestyle that we love the most and lived. I don't think you have to go to church to find that message. No. It just hits you in the mountains. It hits you when you're alone. It hits you when you see a sunrise in New Mexico and the elks bugling over the ridge, or see antelope in the prairie, or a dead gum big old whitetail buck here in Georgia coming through a little old ridge on some white oak acres. And it's just like God and these things would be the furthest thing from you. You're still thinking about all these worldly things, and it's almost like it hits you right in the face. Like, oh my goodness, reset. And so I think that's why what you do with the cooking, the Chuckwagon, what we do in taking so many people hunting, I think they get to see what we already know. Yeah. And once they see it, they understand, oh my goodness, look at this. Little things like my wife has talked me into, and I don't know how she done this, but I always love turkey hunt in April. And, man, we go hard. And, well, she's already put on my calendar. She wants to go to New York City, of all places, the first week in April. And she wants to take our youngest boy up there to see the Statue of Liberty. Yeah. And I've never seen it. I went one time and took some firefighters hunting out of Harlem in the Bronx. We went turkey hunting after 9/11. And I had to just stop and say, without saying just quickly no, I just think back and I was like, well, how many days are we going? And she's like, well, just 3 days. I'm like, okay. And I'm already somewhat dreading it. And now I know I'll have fun when it's all said and done, seeing some historical stuff or whatever. But more importantly, I'm thinking, well, I'm going to visit this city. But I'm thinking, man, everybody in this city, I don't know that I'm going to have a great time. I think I will. I'll have my family with me. But I can guarantee you this, and this might sound a little arrogant, I know that every one of them city folks that I will meet, if I could bring them right here to my farm, I know I could show them a good time. Yeah. Just like you have confidence. If you have any one of them people, anybody come from the city, I don't care if they're liberal, what their agenda is, I guarantee you we could get a reset and say, now check this out. Yeah. And I'm proud of that. Yeah. I'm very proud that we can say that. It's 100% conversion rate of people that say, I don't know, man, this is nice. Yeah. The fresh air. Yeah. This fried chicken. Some collard greens? Are you kidding me? Yeah. You're like, what you going to do later? We're going to build a fire if you want to. You might want to sip your little bourbon, have a cold beer. We got some sweet tea. And they don't know what to do with themselves. Like, man, leave your phone in the room. Let's come out here. We're going to talk some philosophy and laugh and cut up. In the morning, we get up and might ride some dirt bikes if you want to. Just mess around. I was like, I'm too old to ride. No, you ain't. You ain't too old. You ain't too old. Yeah. Let's go ride a horse. Let's go do something. And so I don't know. I think there's something contagious about what we get a chance to do. And I don't know. I'm just tickled about it.
Well, I had a film crew one time, of all things, QVC, the Home Shopping Network. Yeah. They'd call me and they said, hey, we're doing 50 states in 50 weeks, and the tourism department in Oklahoma wants you to represent Oklahoma. I said, whatever, I didn't know who they was, didn't know what QVC was. Mm-hmm. He said, we're going to send a crew down there with us, want to spend a couple of days with you. And I said, all right. So the morning that they was coming, the neighbor had called me the night before and said, hey, I got a bull that's missing, and if you see him, just send him home across the river, will you? Well, I went down there and saddled a horse about first light and was taking off, and here pulled in this van, and these people got out and they said, where you headed? I said, across the Red River. Well, let's put a mic on you. We're going to go with you. I said, you can't get there. I said, you can't cross that river. I said, it's horseback only. It's a rental. I said, I don't care what it is. I don't care if it's an Army tank. You ain't going
across that river. Yeah.
But that night I remember having them gathered around the wagon, and they were all city people, lived in places where street lights were on all the time, And it had ridden really cloudy. And one I'm asking was doing a little deal around the fire, and he said, if you turn that lantern out, how dark is it? I said, dark. And I turned it off, and he didn't hear nothing. And he said, my God, it don't never get this dark in Pennsylvania. I said, it does if you get out of town.
Yeah.
And about that time, the old clouds broke and the moon come out, and they was up on a bluff that overlooked the Red River, you know. And all of them they set their cameras down, they set their phones down, and they just went out there and sit down in the quiet. And I said, this is what life is about. This is where you get to hit that button that says stop, pause, or rewind. But don't fast forward it, because you're going to miss something.
How proud did that make you feel?
It was good.
I bet that was
it was good.
It's unbelievable. I was even talking to some of the country singers we hunt with, and some pretty cool, deep conversations. Blake Shelton being one of them, Luke Bryan being another one. Well, obviously, they've been all over L.A.
Yeah.
They've lived a fast-paced life. But I've noticed they all just yearn to get back to their farms and ranches. Yeah. Blake, obviously, Oklahoma boy, and he's put together some nice real estate out there, and he just lives to be there.
Yeah.
And Luke, on the other hand, has got a place in Tennessee, and he thrives and he works his butt off just to be there. One is to be able to afford it, and the other just to be there with his family. And I remember I asked him, because they run into so many different high-end production people, even their celebrity friends. Some of them grew up never even understanding that you could own a creek.
Yeah.
you know that actually this tree is yours now. It's on your place. And I asked him both separately, like, what is the take on your true city friends that come to visit here that hunt or shoot, ride horses, or just go on walks, barbecue like we did, like y'all still do. And they said 100% they freak out. None of them want to leave.
Yeah.
From the hardcore get up in the morning, Uber Eats, Starbucks first thing, the hustle bustle and subways and horns and sirens.
Yeah.
And they said not a single one that they have had to their places ever want to leave.
Yeah.
And to me, it's like that says it all.
Yeah.
I mean, how many times have you had, like I said, people out in your, in a situation like that, whether they're, production crew who's, doing documentaries, doing segments for your cooking or the cowboy lifestyle. Man, they probably come out there thinking, oh man, we're going to work. We're out here in this dust and mud and cow manure and horse, dander, whatever. And then all of a sudden they're like, they done got out there nasty with you, and like they want to put the camera down, jump on one of your horses.
Yeah,
they want to cross that Red River. They like, no, I want to. I ain't gonna video it. I want to cross it with you.
Yeah, they just to get to live a little bit of it. I think rejuvenates people. It's you get to charge that battery. I never take a day for granted that the Lord gives me. I never take Shan's love for granted. And I never take for granted what I get to see. But to bring people into it that have no idea what it even entails, and to be somewhere where they say, there's no signal here. What? My phone's not going to work? And I said, it's a good thing. You don't need a phone, What about Wi-Fi? I said, no, we ain't going to have none of that neither, And they said, I can't make it. I said, you'll make it just fine.
Yeah.
But I think they panic at first thinking they've unplugged me from civilization. I can't live in this. And then they figure out about maybe the second night when they hear that old cow way off out there in the distance, or they hear that old hoot owl, and they'll look and say, what was that? I said, that's your neighbor. Then they realize the next morning when they get up before the sun comes up and there's no traffic, there's no nothing. And they think, this is peace. This is what life is really meant to be like. And I mean, I won't say I feel sorry for them, and I don't mean it like that, but I wish more people could get outdoors and just relax. I think the world would be a whole lot better place if somebody could go sit down under an oak tree every day and have a fried bologna sandwich than go in any restaurant in the world that's crowded, I don't know.
Yes. As a matter of fact, obviously America is the land of the free, but that doesn't mean everybody's living free.
Yeah.
You have the option. So when you look at some of these communist countries, you can even look at England. I mean, you can't bow hunt in England because guess why? Because Robin Hood made it famous that he was poaching on the king's property to feed people that were in poverty.
Yeah.
Steal from the rich, give to the poor. I think a lot of people thought that legend of Robin Hood, that he come in with a bow and arrow and held up somebody and give me your gold. No, what he stole was venison. What he stole was birds from the king's property and fed villages. And so when you think about now how sad it is that warfare, when I think of warfare, like a true war, I'm thinking of bombs, shooting, people and soldiers marching, and worst case scenario would be some type of nuclear type of bomb or war. But the reality of the situation is that you hear now of the terror of shutting down the grid, turning off this phone. I'm sitting here, even though we're in the country, I got Wi-Fi. My dad calls it wire fire. But it's sad to think how weak have we become that we could be completely have some victor standing over us just by shutting down our electricity, shutting off our cell service, shutting off Wi-Fi, shutting off delivery services, shutting down our government. That to me seems unfathomable.
Yeah.
So, I think anybody with a sane mind, especially a man, thinks ahead for their family. Like my wife would get to looking at this stuff digitally and on social media. She's like, we better save some water. We better do this. We better do that. We got to put up some food. And I'm like, whoa, gear it down, honey. Go watch Kent Rollins. We need to figure out how to keep some bugs out of the flour. I don't know how we seal it. Maybe we go ahead. If you want to, I told her the other day, if you want to prep, I said, go on and get me a bunch of cornmeal and put me in a bag and take my, I got one of them commercial shrink wrappers up there at my deer cooler. I said, put us several pounds in there. And I said, maybe, I said, that Crisco, I think it was made for greasing tanks anyway. Hell, it ain't going to go bad. We can put that in the cornbread. I said, and far as prepping for meat, I got a bow and arrow. I still got plenty of shells. We ain't got to preserve nothing. I can go get me a deer. We'll eat squirrel. We'll eat rabbits. We'll take care of a wildlife. I said, so really, what about water? I said, man, on the mountain up here, there's, Callaway Blue is a famous water around here. It's starting to go viral. I think you had one earlier. Well, it comes out of the mountain right up here, and it goes back underground, and then it comes out of a spring right down the road from me. I said, Christy, we got a creek that comes out of this mountain up here, the last of the Appalachian, the most southern part. We got water. I said, we're fine. Yeah. Now, it's going to get a little hot with no electricity in Georgia. Might get a little cold, but ain't got to worry about that. We got firewood. So I'm blown away how people become so dependent on certain aspects that was not even around. And it should be a wake-up call, especially for the men, to pay attention. Watch Cast Iron Cowboy, read your books, listen to your poetry, maybe watch an episode of Bone Collector on Outdoor Channel and realize the fun we have. And it's not about just how big an elk, but what it can provide. And I think people are so ignorant to some of that because it's been given to them. Yeah. And then if you look at the other side of things, a country like China, who, obviously is a high population, and I'm not picking on China. I ain't never been to China. I don't know nothing about it other than it seems like everything I get when I buy a charger or buy my youngin' some toy, it comes from that place. Yeah. But I heard the other day, it's like, you can't hunt in China. So I guess the rest, about the most you could do, and I guess it's against their religion, if you want to gig one of them old goldfish or koi fish out of the Chinese restaurant, or, you're not going to hunt. But I heard the other day, too, on some podcast, might have been Rogan, to say, well, China's in a very vulnerable position. You don't have to bomb them. You just shut down their imports on food. Don't send them flour. Don't send them beef. Don't send them pecans from where? America. So it hits me to think that we have gotten so out of balance with nature, where me and you are sitting here preaching and living this very balanced situation. Yeah. That doesn't mean that If you're in there with your beautiful wife and you run into, you're like, oh man, I just see this 4-6 has got a new restaurant. Let's go in there and check out this restaurant. I want to see how they cook their steaks. Yeah, you enjoy the amenities of the city, but I don't know, man. There's a cool balance, and I'm proud that I was raised that way.
Oh, me and you both. Everybody in our little community there in Southwest Oklahoma, most everybody, they might have been called middle class. We thought we were high class. You know, we were poor, but we thought we were high class people because, hey, we had a roof over our head. You know, mom and daddy loved us. They worked our butts off most of the time. Beat you if you needed it a little, you know. But it was, the whole community was like that. Everybody bonded together. Everybody knew that you had to work hard. And I don't think I don't think I ever heard anybody talk down to someone else.
I agree.
You know, my dad had always told me, and I tell people today, you never look down on somebody unless you're reaching down here with a hand to help them up.
There you go.
You know,
I love that.
You can always help somebody. An old man on the ranch told me, and I wish when I was little, Mike, I'd had a tape recorder to put in my pocket to just remember all them things, you know,
too.
because
or the sayings or the analogies, what metaphors that they would use.
Because they had so much wisdom that I thought was
unbelievable.
Why are these old men telling me this stuff? I don't want to hear this stuff, you know? And they'd tell me, they'd say, you're gonna get a couple of good horses in your life, probably 2 good dogs and 1 good wife. He said, treat them all the same, you'll come out better in the end.
But it's so true.
I said, I'm 10 years old. You know,
like,
I got a good horse.
Mean? Then you start getting 50, 60, 70, and you're like,
oh yeah,
I get it.
Yeah.
You know something that I heard all my life, and it's really been amazing because I think the one thing we're living now with the news and even social media, it's so hard to discern what's true and not, which obviously has brought me back closer to that Bible. I've raised as much hell as anybody out there, but because now I don't know what's true. Like I'm hearing stuff. I even had a chance to sit down with Tucker Carlson the other day, and then since everything has happened with the situation with Charlie Kirk, there's so many stories, and I'm sitting there thinking in my mind's, I don't know how to discern or even know, and it's like in the prayers, I'm thinking what's true or not, and it got back to an old saying that I've heard never meant anything to me, but it's so true. I remember. Once again, old timer, could have been my papa, but everybody said it. Said believe none of what you hear and half of what you see.
Yeah.
Now that, if you think about it, that don't even make sense. That saying was before there was TVs, radios, and everything. Yeah. Believe none of what you hear and half of what you see. Yeah. Now, if you see it, you've always think it's believable. Of course, Nazi Germany proved that to be not the case because you could see it, but it didn't mean it was true. And now I think it hit me. I was like, that is what a kind of a worn out saying that is so very true.
Yeah. If we could just put the world on rewind.
Yes.
And go back and let people live. If we just done it 2 days at a time, let's go through the Dust Bowl 2 more days. Let's go through the Great Depression 2 more days. Let's do without electricity for 2 more days. I always told people, I said, I really think the world might be better off if we just unplugged everything that was electronic.
Mm-hmm.
I said, here at the wagon and in a teepee, I have running water when it rains.
Mm-hmm.
I have electricity when it lightnings, In the summer, I have a good heater, and in the winter, I have good air conditioner. But maybe I'm old-timey, maybe I'm old-fashioned, but I do love to reminisce.
Me too.
I do love to look back and think, oh, that hurt, or that was really hard, but look what we got from it, If we hadn't had the Dust Bowl, there wouldn't be the conservation efforts that there is now. If there hadn't have been the Great Depression, there probably wouldn't be as many jobs in America as what there is now with so many laborers doing different things because everybody had to branch out and learn a different trade, You can buy a horse at the horse sale any day of the week. One of them can have a blanket on him, and when you pull a blanket off, it might not be what you thought it was. But with a little love, guidance, care, and some teaching, we can make anything, because America's smart people.
Yes.
We can make anything in the world to get by with it we need to get by with, but it don't have to be complicated.
It don't.
You know, we used to have them, and you probably had them down here. We'd have them kin folks that come see us that we'd think, we're glad to see them, but we're really glad when they leave.
That's right. Know? Oh, yeah.
And you could get that same kid every year to pee on the hot wire fence. Every year, because he never learned. You know? Yes. But yes. It was a learning experience. Everybody learned something from it. But and I don't mean this bad toward anybody, I'm a simple person, simple-minded. And used to, when we was little and somebody'd say, you know, they're simple. It was like, they're not smart. I love simple.
Me, you know? I desire it. Like, I love the idea of simple. It gives me hope. I hate to, I mean, not to overcomplicate my feeling. It's just and if you think about it, we've all been through, you know, dark places in our life, and people, you know, a lot of times you hear the word privilege or whatever. I've stand by the fact, I don't think anyone, I think we all have a certain amount of privilege in being obviously born, knowing that we got a Lord and Savior, and, or, you know, but nobody's privileged to the point you don't experience heartbreak, that you don't lose loved ones, that obviously the wages of sin are death. We're not going to be here forever. You have situations, you get hungry, you have circumstances that your loved ones are in that hurt you. But at the end of the day, I just think if you think and live simple, it simply makes things simple. That won't be something that goes down in history as an analogy that people say, but I don't know, if things can be so out of hand to where it gets so confusing. But when you're going through those darker times, what is immediately, especially if you're married and you're with your wife and you're going with it, what do you? It's almost like that old. Me and you old enough to remember that old Cowboy, take me away. You know, the mom done all this stuff, domestic, worked in the office, done all this stuff, and they had that. I thought that was the best commercial. Oh, Cowboy, take me, and then to show a woman in a bubble bath, just simply sitting in a hot tub of water with bubbles in it. But if you think about it, that's what all my buddies, when they get bogged down, they just want to go and sit by your fire, smell that steak cooking and that bread pudding that y'all making. They want to go turkey hunting, and not even just to get a turkey. They're ready for the campfire. They're ready for that relaxing and simple. I remember one time I went through a pretty weird time in my life, and I remember all I wanted to do was to buy. For some reason, it seems like everybody wants to do this, that get in this situation. I just wanted to buy an Airstream and just take off, and didn't know where I'd be the next morning. Just stop and camp and go and just get away and be in the middle of nowhere. So anytime you get in a tough situation, I mean, you're going to remove all the complicated things. You know, if you have somebody, and I've had several people that I know that's close to me that's went to rehab, you know, whether it's for drug addiction, alcohol, you know, or counseling. What's the first thing they do? You hand this over. The first thing you do. I mean, that's checked at the desk, and they check you in a room. And typically they're going to set you out by a flower garden pretty soon to give you some time by yourself and start thinking.
That's right.
So, yeah, I think you're right. I think simple is good.
It is a good thing. I wouldn't trade anything that I've done in life to get to where I'm at. Hard times, good times, bad times. They've all made something better as it went along. I think, you know, you bugle up that elk and you hear him the first time out there, and you think, I can feel my hairs on my neck swelling up just a little bit. This is going to be good. And you get that feeling. I want to keep that feeling. Not that I've even seen the bull yet. Not that I've even took the lid off that Dutch oven and know what's in it. But I want to keep that feeling of anticipation, excitement, and joy in my life till it's my last breath. Because I know even that last breath will have some excitement to it. And because I haven't done all I want to do, Somebody asked me the other day, said, how long are you going to cook? I said, I'm going to cook for my own funeral. I said, good Lord's going to give me some help. We're going to get that done. I said, it's the best life insurance Shan ever had. What are you talking about? I said, fix big old chicken fried steak, gravy, mashed potatoes, bread pudding with whiskey, cream sauce, sourdough biscuits. And I said, she's going to let them in the church free and charge them $500 a plate to get out. And I said, it's a good deal. And but I said, I don't worry about tomorrow, you know.
Right.
I just think, man, I'm glad I got to have today.
That's right.
I didn't want to go through Atlanta airport, but I wanted to meet you.
I was, so excited.
So I get
to,
there's that excitement. There's that anticipation because our paths might not have ever changed. I mean, not crossed ever in life if we hadn't have done something that maybe put us a little bit in the uncomfortable mode. And that's going through an airport you don't like, being crowded when you don't want to be crowded. But I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world, Mike. I wouldn't. Shan asked me one time, she said, I never see you give up. And I said, it wasn't in my blood.
Mm-hmm.
I said, you remember when we got them 2 beagles that you rescued? She said, yeah. I said, and you told me one day they ain't never going to catch that rabbit. I said, ain't their job to catch that rabbit. I said, every day they go out with the anticipation, the excitement, and the joy of, I'm rabbit hunting today. And I said, you get to hear them. They don't quit because they don't catch him. They go back the next day and they try it again. Every day they will do that. And we had an old beagle that I dearly loved. He was with us 14 years. And when we had 3 million subscribers on YouTube, if he'd have had his own channel, he would have had 33 million. That dog stole everything in the world from, he'd be on the table when you didn't know he was there. People loved that dog. And last year, June 7th, we had to put him down.
Oh, man.
Week later, we lost our home to a fire in Rio Doce out there at the wildfires. The next day, we started filming for this new series, The Cast Iron Cowboy. Shen said, God has put too much on us. I said, no, he don't put too much on you.
Mm-hmm.
I said, my shoulders is broad. Throw it over on me. I said, I don't care. And we got back and was talking about that beagle. And I said, he touched so many people's lives just by we called him Bonehead, and that's what he was.
That's awesome.
She said, we're going to do a T-shirt campaign. Had a picture of him sort of in black and white, had some sunglasses on, said the Big Life. And she said, all the donations, all the T-shirts, the proceeds will go to the Lincoln County Humane Society in Rio Doce, New Mexico. I said, you better call them, tell them what's finna happen. I said, because this dog's finna ring a bell. And we did a tribute video to him, and people need to go back and see it just to know. I feel sorry for a man or a woman that don't know the love of a good dog.
Yes.
Yes. They love you more than they love themselves.
Absolutely.
And we did the video. It went out there, and people loved it. We let it run 2 weeks, and we took them people a check for $57,000.
Holy cow.
And I walked in there, and that guy went to crying. He said, you're the beagle's dad. And I said, the beagle is still here, my friend. But I said, if we could all have the same determination, excitement, and joy and happiness, knowing that, boy, in the morning I'm going to hit that door and I am going to go trail me a rabbit. I've learned so much from dogs and horses in my life. We had an old dog we called Frank. He was a Llewellyn setter.
Mm-hmm.
These people had paid over $5,000 for him, and he was gun shy, so they turned him out.
Dang.
Frank would come and visit us, and he would stay a day or two, and then he might be gone. But then he got to bringing us presents. We'd be catering somewhere, come back. He'd bring you left-handed gloves, left shoes from somebody. He'd bring you a shirt every once in a while. We'd been in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, cooking for about 2 weeks, and we'd come back, and he met us at the house, and he had an old dried petrified cat that had been run over for about 70 years, in his mouth. And I told Shannon, I said, that is true love right there. Frank has brought you a cat,
Brought a cat, yeah.
But he would go in the backyard every day, and we had a pool with a little old deck around it, little 18-foot circle pool, and he would sit there and wait for this cottontail every morning to come out. And him and that rabbit sit there and just stare at each other. There wouldn't be no movement. They just stare,
check each other out.
He got run over one day, broke her heart. But he taught me too, it's about having that mentality. I'm going to catch that rabbit.
We're just getting started. Hold on. We got a little bit more coming after this.
Spandau Arms was founded with a simple idea. The best part of hunting isn't the gear, it's the memories. From the first rooster rise of the season in the tall grass to the last second opportunity on the target buck as sunset closes in. Spandau believes firearms should be built to perform, priced to be accessible, and designed to become an essential piece of your hunting story. Their lineup includes field-ready shotguns and precision-driven rifles built for hunters, competitors, and recreational shooters who know that quality and dependability matter more than the hype. Born from the experience of American hunters and crafted by generations of gunmakers, each Spandau firearm is built for real-world performance in the moments that matter.
You know what? I've never heard that and never even thought about it, but you're exactly right. Yeah. I grew up here and we'd always have these pine woods and broom sage, and rabbit hunting was a big deal. And you forget, these dogs ain't running thinking they're going to run a rabbit by you so we can put them in the back of our vest and put them in gravy. They think they're going to catch them.
Yeah.
And I've never seen, I've got a couple squirrel dogs. You met Dan and Rose. They're trying to get in here now. I think they must hear the wind blowing a little bit and get nervous, want to come on in there and hang out with us. But every once in a blue moon, especially Rose, that little Kimmer Kerr, she'll catch a squirrel by luck. But I don't reckon I've ever been with a pack of beagles that's caught a rabbit.
Yeah.
They run them.
Yeah.
But every day, until the day they die, they're going to catch a rabbit. That says something about not giving up.
Yeah.
We already tell ourselves, I was going to be a motorcycle racer one time, and I was going to race these dirt bikes. And I give up. I'm not lying, Ken. I finally, after trying to hit one little old triple that I shouldn't have hit as a chubby, overweight white guy, I finally realized, I ain't chasing a rabbit no more. Yeah. I think I'm going to park this sucker, and I'm going to watch my kids ride these dirt bikes. But you're right, man. You can learn a lot.
Oh, yeah.
You learn a lot from wild animals, domestic pets. They're amazing. They know.
When I was out there first guiding hunters in the Heelan, and I took a mule from what the uncle called Flatlands, Oklahoma, out there, and he ain't never seen a bear.
Yeah.
And we was in between some drop camps, and we was going to just do a little looking. We was going up side of one of them old mountains, going them switchbacks. And old Pee Wee, he laid them ears out there, and then here we go about 90 mile an hour straight down the mountain. It ain't on no trail,
Yeah.
Passed the uncle, and he said, what is it? I said, I don't know, but I said, we ain't going up there no more. And about that time, there's an old sow and two cubs coming around through there, but
old mule knew it, didn't it?
Always watch that old mule. Any of them that we had in a pack stream or whatever, they going to see it first. They're going to smell it first. And them ears is just like a pointer on a bird dog, And I say, ease up, boys, but we need to get off right here. I don't know what's up there. Could be the biggest bull we ever seen. Could be a turkey. I don't know. But we're going to get off and we're going to find out.
Golly. And it might be hard to answer because I know there's a lot of, every cowboy loves their horses, but do you think an old mule is smarter than a horse?
Well,
like I said, that's a trick question, ain't it?
I know when we be up there in the mountains, mule is more sure-footed.
I've definitely heard that, like on the trails, on those switchbacks.
A mule is not going to hurt himself. He's not going to get in the bind where he hurts himself.
Yeah.
You can ride a mule all day long, come across a creek, him and horses both. Horse is going to drink. 9 times out of 10, mule won't till he knows he's through,
He wants to get through it.
Now he wants to get the job plumb done, finished. I'm over.
I got you.
And then he will. But, I've had great ones from both of them, mules and horses both. I think the worst thing I ever got to ride, I remember when I was little, my dad told me, he said, we're going to go gather some cows in the morning. And we was taking care of a bunch of yearlings for this guy. And he'd throw an old milk cow in there with him, keep them yearlings always coming up, you know, like that old cow's trained. You honk horn, you holler. Here she'd come with them other yearlings just follow her. Well, they was all loading up horses, and I went down to catch my horse, going to put it in the trailer. You don't need your horse, you know. And he threw in a blanket, saddle blanket. We got to pick up and left. He caught that old milk cow, old Guernsey milk cow, and put a halter on her, throw that blanket on her, and he said, get on her, and he said, just head toward the house. He said, all them cows, all them yearlings will follow her.
Put you on a cow.
And them old men, they'd come by and say, you real cowboy today, ain't you? And I said, yeah. And I always thought it was sort of humiliating at the time, but I was just doing my job.
Right.
You know, that old cow there wasn't no yearling going to run off nowhere. They was going to follow that old milk cow plumb 4 miles to the house, you know. But, man, them old men give me a hard time about it.
I bet they rode you hard,
They
didn't they?
did.
What I got a question for you. It's a little technical term. There's a couple of things I definitely wanted to do before you got out of here, Kent. But talking about mules and horses, I ain't never seen, what's a donkey do? Like the old mysterious jackass.
Yeah.
I mean, what do you ever see them? Because I don't reckon I've ever seen many donkeys on the trail.
When I first started helping the uncle out there in the Gila, and we'd sometimes have pack trips in the summer. Mm-hmm. Not very many fishermen because there wasn't a lot of big creeks up there. Have a lot of camera people, you know.
Mm-hmm. Production guy, yeah.
Just tourists want to sightsee and
I
take
got you,
pictures.
yeah.
Well, he'd do like a little 3-day deal, you know. We'd take 6 to 8 at the most. And he had 2 little burros. He called them Coors and Budweiser. And both of them had little soft panniers on them, you know, and they'd hold a little ice chest on each side. And he put ice in them, and he put beer in them. Mm-hmm. But they never had a halter on them, never nothing. And I remember this guy came in, he had a bottle of scotch or something, and I said, well, just stick it in that ice chest. And he seen me loaded on that little bureau, you know. We took off up the mountain. Them burros, they was just wandering off the other direction, going everywhere. And that guy said, that's $200 bottle of scotch. And I said, they'll be at camp when we get there. He said, well, I said, no, they'd be all right. And they'd be wandering around everywhere in the world. When we get to where we was going, Pryor Creek or Willow Creek or whatever it was, here Coors and Budweiser would come, you know. And I told Uncle, I said, where'd you get these at? He said, I traded a guy some hay for him. I said,
a bale of hay.
You know, like they wasn't big as nothing, and just one of them little, you could probably get a 12-pack of beer in each one of them.
Yeah,
you know? But they got their job done, you know. A mule was always something, too. We always had one when we was growing up. They can kick you with any foot. Mm-hmm. You know, just don't have to just be a back foot. And they can turn around and bite you pretty quick. Sort of like a Shetland. A lot of people had Shetlands growing up. Some of the orneriest things there was in the world, get barn sired, everything in the world. But a mule, I always trusted a mule. You know, they was just.
I've noticed that because I didn't grow up riding horses and stuff, and so I didn't really start getting a chance to be around horses much until I started going on these elk trips, going to Alaska hunting moose, and obviously we would put the teams together, and we'd always have mules and horses. And I caught myself. I got to where I was smart enough to ask. You know, at first, you know, I'm young, and you know, you feel like you want the stallion, you want that old. Purebred sucker looked like he was off a Zeus movie or Gladiator or something. And I finally realized I'm looking for that old worn out, tired horse or old mule. And I rode quite a few mules, and I got to where, especially as I got older, like talking about sure-footed, I'd catch myself, you know, like, man, what, you got a mule? Gonna ride one of these mules? And because you I don't think a mule, maybe you can tell it what to do as much, but if you're just trying to get to camp, you know, they take you on in there. They sure-footed.
One of the first ranches, too, that I'd been on, I didn't take my wagon. They was furnishing a wagon and had a team. I just took all my cast iron. Going to be there about 4 weeks. And I get down there. This headquarters supposed to be in there like 11 o'clock that morning. Get there. Ain't nobody out there. This young little Mexican boy comes around the corner in a minute, and I said, "You seen the team or any of these cowboys or anything?" I said, "I need to load this wagon and know where camp's at." He said, "I do not know where the team is." He said, "They turned them out last year. We ain't seen them." He said, they're gone. And finally here they come in to a set of pins, and there's 2 ropes on each of them mules. They just dragging them in there, and it took me and 9 cowboys to get the harness on them. Finally got them backed up there at the wagon, got them hooked up. One of them had an ear in his mouth. We had them hobbled, and got up there in that wagon seat, and old Ronnie told me, he said, "You ready for us to turn them loose, Kent?" I said, "Hang on a minute, Ronnie." I went around there behind the barn and got me a big old cedar post, run through the back wheels of that wagon, across both of them. I got up in that seat, and he said, "When you want me to take that out?" I said, "How far is it to camp?" He said, 9 miles. I said, "I'll take it out when I get there." Because they just going to try to run away with you, And,
right.
And they just drag it away, and they just jump and lunge and jump and lunge. And it was like that every day for 3 weeks. And the last week, they finally sort of figured out, hey, this guy ain't giving up,
Right.
And
had to kind of break them.
Ronnie come over that last day after we cooked lunch, and he said, "Kent, you can just take my pickup and trailer to the headquarters." I said, "No, they're just now getting pleasant to drive." I said, "I'm going to drive them to the barn." "No." He said, "I have never got to drive them when they were a pleasure." He said, "I've always had to fight them." And he got in there, and they took off. And I waited for him when he got up at the headquarters, and I said, "How was it?" He said, "If you'd stay and work these mules every day, I think they'd make a team." I said, "They're yours, Ronnie. You work them all you want."
You dang right. Work them all you want.
But they're just like people. They's good people. They's good mules. They's good horses. They's some that's a little ornery.
I can see that. And I learned something quick, too. I was always not ashamed to say it, but like even getting on those horses in those mountains. I remember in Wyoming, Alaska, some of that stuff's pretty treacherous.
Yeah.
And then I was nervous of the horse because that sucker didn't have a throttle on it.
Yeah.
It's just what's that saying? 1,000 pounds of hamburger with a brain, whatever muscle, or 700 pounds, 1,000 pounds of muscle and a small brain in some cases. But matter of fact, one time I was hunting the Waddell. I drew that hunt of a lifetime tag at the Waddell, and we had. In that country, you can't take anything. Yeah. You can walk it or you can take horses. Yeah. So we had, back in our camp, we had a couple mules, and then we all had a riding horse. We had 3 horses in there, one for a camera guy, a friend of mine named Grizz, who was guiding me, who knew that country pretty good. And we'd been elk hunting about the 3rd day, and same thing. We get back where we tied our horses, where we went hunting that afternoon. Well, the horses are all lathered up, and I mean, literally like them old movies, John Wayne, where they'd be foaming, almost just slobbering, and then tore up a big stuff. Thank goodness we tied them up good. Well, Grizz immediately said, "Man, a bear or something done come through here and scared these horses." And he said, "Just be careful." He said, they're on 10. I mean, they're just, just jittery. Yeah. When we left them, they were happy as they could be. Everything was good. I got on that horse, Kent, and I was trying to back him out of there. Never professed to be a horseman. And I was backing that horse out at night, trying to get him. And I had my bow I had my bow on my back. I got me made me a sling and had it on my back, and had my arrows in and then I took my pack off and kind of put it right there where you kind of can't, what you call the little roll, your bed roll would go. And I had all tied and secure. Well, I'm backing out there. Well, I back that horse into like a deadfall in the dark, and that thing reached out and hits him on the haunches. And let me tell you something, buddy. Old Ty Murray had been proud of this boy. But I remember I got scared. I just let go of the reins and hold on to that bullhorn. I look deep down. I felt like I was masculine. Yeah. But deep down, if it had been the camera, I was a sissiest, screaming and hollering. And I'll never forget, I was on the side of one of them mountains, and I'm holding on to the saddle horn, which, they're like, grab the reins. And I'm holding on like just a little sissy boy, holding on to the saddle horn. And I remember one time I felt like I was going to go over, and I reached out, and I remember my hand touched the dirt. And dude, finally he settled down, and I think I'd done soiled myself by this point. And and I got off the horse. I was kind of like Wanda, you tell that story. I had to walk. I probably walked a mile or two until I got the courage to get back on that horse. But getting back to experiences, what a cool experience. I mean, who gets to experience elk hunting off a horse? Yeah. I mean, that's amazing. And the work you would have, how early we'd get up to put them saddles and get them horses prepared. But I wouldn't trade it for nothing. We'd brew us some coffee on the fire. And I remember going up them meadows at the Waddell, and we trying to chase them out of them meadows. We'd be paralleling them. Just click, click, click. And of course, they didn't pay no attention to them horses hardly. And man, them Bill could be bugling. Couldn't even see them in the dark. And they'd be going up that mountain. We'd be paralleling them. And man, me hurrying out and getting our bow out and literally tie the horses and feel like we was about to get a shot. And I don't know, man. I just wish everybody had a chance to experience
that.
That's
that anticipation, excitement, and joy that's fitting to happen in life.
And I finally ended up getting one, but still just an amazing experience of the horses and just everything. It just felt, I don't know, man. It just felt like Quanah Parker out there, one of the Comanches out there, chasing the elk in the wilderness.
But it's, even if you hadn't got anything, just the fact you got to go and be there.
That's correct. Just being there. Yeah. One thing I want to do, Kent, because I know you do a bunch of cowboy poetry, and obviously I'm a Southern guy, and we was talking about all those old time analogies, man. What's some of our favorite analogies, man? We need to trade some of them. Or sayings. We talked about, man, believe half of what none of what you hear, half of what you see. Like, for instance, one my papa used to tell me, I never forget. It was two things he told me. I was like, Papa, how you doing? And he's like, good. He said, I've been about half sick. He said, and I never forget, he told me this. He said, I feel like cat shit and onion gravy. and I say that. That was my papa's line. But stuff like that. What's some old cowboy sayings?
We'd be working cattle or be busy or something, and some old man would tell you how busy he was, Well, this guy called me not long ago, and he said, I'm trying to work y'all in for this deal. I know you're busy. And I said, I'm busier than a three-legged cat covering up 4 piles of shit on an ice-covered pond. I said, this ain't going to happen.
I love that.
But if we get it, like I said, if we had a tape recorder when we was little, just to get them all, it takes a big dog to weigh a ton. They'd tell me that, and I think, there has never been that big a dog. How come?
Right.
And they'd tell me like we'd be digging a post hole and you'd hit them old blue rock, just be solid. You'd get that old rock bar in there and you just take 6 hours to dig a post hole, and you just keep beating on it. Big. He said, take a big dog to weigh a ton, don't it? And I'm thinking, I don't know what he's talking about,
Yeah, but say, we got a friend I elk hunt with a lot, Tom Powell. He killed a big old bull late one evening, and I said, you got it done, Tom? He said, old possum walked late. And I just, the other one my papa said, he was always talking about how he felt. He said he felt like a turd rolled in cracker crumbs. I mean, I'm convinced that these sayings don't come from New York City.
No, I think they come from deep down a long time ago, hard times, back in the sticks, part of history that people have forgot, that needs to be relived again. But, that I can remember we'd roped an old cow one time, and her old bag was swelled up really tight on one side. And Daddy said, we need just get one of them needles, and you just put it in there before she got mastitis. And I don't know, 10, 11 years old. He said, put your head in her flank, she don't kick. Because an old cow, she could raise that back leg, she could hit you right there in the forehead. He said, push your head right in her flank, she ain't gonna kick you. Well, she knocked me out first time, And he said, other side is what I meant to tell you. And then anything that ever happened to you, he'd say, I meant the other side.
I meant the other side, not like that. But yeah.
But he thought if it hurt, it had to help.
It had to help.
Yeah.
I look back and you're exactly right, man. I'm so thankful that I was raised up. We was talking about love and not talking about down to anybody. Now, sarcasm and talking down, two different things. Because I've been around cowboys and stuff. Nobody talk down to each other. But if you think you ain't gonna get ribbed, and you ain't gonna do something a little feminine, do something a little. It ain't talking. I'm talking about. There's a lot of love in that criticism and that sarcasm, son.
There is that. You never, on a typical ranch setting, a cowboy never come under the fly of the wagon unless he was asked, which was the tarp that covered it. But one thing that they learned real quick too is them young kids, you never come in and say, oh, today's my birthday.
Right.
Because you're going to get a shapping. which is sometime that day they gonna catch you, they gonna stretch you out, and they gonna take them leather leggings and they gonna wear your butt out. You know.
It is so cool to it is so cool when you look at just all the little small things that at the time you're talking about those sayings and stuff we were talking about. To me, a lot of them didn't make sense.
Yeah.
A lot of these lessons I was learning as a kid, you know, with my papa, like, you know, and my dad, you know, like, hey boy, it can always get worse. A lot of times I don't want to hear that because it was the worst to me. They would always minimize things. Getting back to simple. Oh, yeah. They never overcomplicated things. Yeah. As a matter of fact, I saw a thing the other day to where they're talking about how these psychiatrists, you know, and you always hear, you know, you just figure out some lady sitting there that probably's never been married that's giving marriage advice, which I've always thought was dumb. But, you know, like, tell us your problems. And I look back, that is not the cowboy philosophy. That is not the country boy. It's almost like, not to say we avoid our problems, but rather than dwell on the negative, pessimistic stuff, and it seems like the world wants you to, and even some of these, they've been to school for 6 years for me to tell you about my problems. How about I be around a bunch of men and women who remind me of what my problems ain't? Yeah. And they've now proven to where the worst thing you can do is to bring up these negative stories of your past and or what's happening in your present. So you get past it. And so I've always thought, you know, how do I escape and sometimes get past these certain situations? It is an elk hunt. It is a squirrel hunt with my dogs. It is throwing the baseball with my little boy, or out there, you know, or going on a nice dinner with my wife. And I don't want to sit there and talk. So people that are constantly talking about the negative things, where you look back, I mean, most of the philosophy we grew up around, it was just like, oh boy, I know it hurts, or, you know, got your heart broke, but it could always get worse. Come on, let's go catch a catfish. Like, you expect a little more, and back then I've been like, well, that's it? Yeah. Like, that's all you got. That's how to get past, like, oh, hey, there'll be another girl. Well, you don't even realize it. You in 8th grade, that little old large old Norman, don't worry about her. But I tell you what, catfish are biting. Yeah. And I'm like, no, Papa, I want a little bit more advice on these women. Like, nah, I ain't figured them out. You ain't either. Come on, we can try to catch catfish, you know. That is right. Check the turtle basket or something. And so, yeah, I'm thankful for that. But, hey, another thing, Kent, too, before we get out here, too, is talking about, one is I want to talk to you about, I always laugh because, I love food. I got a buddy named Eric Dunn. He loves to eat. And I don't know why, but we always talk about our death row meal. Like, you know, what, you know, man, this is it. Yeah. We know for some weird reason, the good Lord doesn't let us know or whatever. But what is your, like, you person, what's your death row meal? Like, man, if this is it.
If I don't have to cook it, that's the best thing.
Okay, yeah, all right. Yeah. What is one that you don't have to cook? Maybe Shannon throws down for you, or your favorite restaurant, or whatever.
You know, I love a tenderloin. Mm-hmm. Whether it be beef, elk, caribou, moose. I love a tenderloin. Braise it really good. Maybe give it a little smoke first. Put it back in cast iron skillet. Finish it off with a little red wine, garlic, some shallot, and then just thicken that sauce. Make you a gravy, sort of like a red-eye gravy, but add a little coffee to it, and then just some biscuits, and then some of that bread pudding with the whiskey cream sauce. And don't scrimp on the whiskey. Buy good whiskey to make that sauce out of. And then just 2 friends to eat it with.
So just some good bread pudding and a nice braised tenderloin, still cooked in cast iron. Yep. Golly, do you throw anything with it? Some mashed potatoes, or I
don't mind some mashed potatoes, or maybe some hominy and green chili casserole.
Hominy,
yeah.
Man, I ain't heard hominy in a long time, dude. My grandma used to feed me hominy.
We make a lot of that. It's just canned hominy, drain juice off of it, bacon, onions, sour cream, green chilies, jalapeno, red chilies, whatever you want to put in it.
Let people know what hominy is. A lot of people are like, what's hominy?
Yeah,
Even some countries.
Swelled up corn.
There you go.
To lye. You know, years ago, they used to just do it in them old burn-out stumps, and they would put that corn in there and let it swell. But
would they just soak it in water, let it swell?
Yeah, water and a little lye, you know. Yeah. I'm going to ask you this question because you're a Southern guy. Mm-hmm. I know you've eaten a lot of cornbread.
Yeah.
Is there a difference between yellow cornbread and white cornbread taste?
Yes, in my opinion, yeah. Matter of fact, I got in the biggest argument in Kansas. So I got to where I got this little thing that I do in hunting camp. I do it almost, not in every hunting camp, but my closest friends I do. And I would do it if I was hunting with you and Shannon. I'd say, hey, I'll do Southern night. I'll do Southern night. And typically what I do, and I found that there's a couple, like I love collard greens and pepper sauce, vinegar sauce. And then typically, I love fried chicken or country fried steak. Seems like in the South, I don't know that we're that good at cooks, but we fry everything. So that old grease covered, it's got to be covered. Yeah. And so I remember I was going to make I went and bought a cast iron, one of them skillets like you cook on. And I love to make cornbread in that. And we always use white cornmeal. Matter of fact, is it not Martha? Yeah, it might be Martha White cornmeal. Yeah. But it's white and rich cornmeal. Well, anyway, I couldn't find nothing out in Kansas but the yellow cornmeal. Well, I tried my same little recipe, and I didn't do it as good. And so typically how I make cornbread is how my grandmama made it. It's the simplest thing in the world. She would take a cup of cornmeal, a cup of buttermilk, and like maybe a little pinch of flour, just a little flour, and an egg. And I remember she would put all that in the cast iron skillet. Of course, the only thing she made in that particular cast iron skillet was cornbread. And she would mix it up in the skillet. Oh, and then she'd put about a quarter, maybe it seemed like it was an eighth or a quarter cup of oil, like cooking oil.
Good bacon grease.
Yeah, good bacon, like some grease. And she would just use, whatever, vegetable oil, peanut oil, whatever. And she'd cook that thing. And then she'd take about 2 double spoons of jalapeno, that pickled jalapeno.
Yes.
Throw it in there. And man, it would cook, and she'd cook it. And I said, I'd ask my grandma, I said, how do I know when it's done? So you smell it, you'll smell it. And sure enough, have a black crust on the bottom. And man, that was always my favorite, but it was always a white cornmeal. And so I've always how do they even make the difference? But my buddies, I argue with them. I said, man, you got any white cornmeal? They ain't no yellow. Corn is yellow. I'm like, I don't know. And then grits. I don't know why. It seemed like the South is always white. Like grits is more of a white. Yep. Where it seemed like you go west and it's getting more yellow.
Yeah. I'd be on a ranch somewhere and we'd take a lot of canned goods and then we try to transform them canned goods into being better than fresh. Mm-hmm. But I'd have so many pounds of cornmeal, so many pounds of flour, sugar, coffee, But sometimes if I run out of cornmeal, I'd have some white cornmeal. Mm-hmm. Because I'll mix white and yellow together.
Mix them together? Yeah. I'll need to try that.
And especially like to batter fish sometime with a little flour, But I just going to make some regular old cornbread. All I had white cornmeal and put it out there, and them cowboys, them old men, they look at us. What's that?
Because it's white cornbread.
Yeah. I said, it's cornbread. That ain't cornbread. Cornbread yellow. I said, it's cornbread today. Oh, I ain't going to eat it. I said, I don't care whether you eat it or not.
I made it.
But most of the time, cowboys never come into camp and said, hey, what's for supper? You didn't ask the cook what he was going to cook. And I can remember being on a ranch, and I'd make a menu and a grocery list, and I never strayed from it, But I'd tell them, I'd say, y'all, a lot of times it was really known that a ranch was really tight with groceries. You were going to go to a place, and they'd tell the cook, they get 1 egg every morning. They have 1 piece of bacon, 1 ice cube, And I'm thinking, I ain't work for them people. I said, if you want me to feed them, I'm going to feed them like I want to. And I said, that's where it's going to be every day. So I'd make this menu to last all the week. Sure, there's some repeats through there, but first night in was always a big old bone-in ribeye. Somewhere down the line was chicken fried steak. Fridays was always fish day. And Thursday night was 1 3/4 bone-in center-cut pork chop with a green chili chipotle glaze that went on top that we now sell as our chutney. And them old men would get there by the side of the wagon, and they'd be watching, supper time. And I hear one of them say, is that a piece of pork chop he throwed on that fire? I said, yeah. God, don't he know this is a cow outfit? I don't know. He's a pretty good cook, but we never had no pork chops. And you'd smoke them so while on one end, old Bertha, and then you'd finish them over a hot fire, you know. And they come in there, eat 2 of them. I mean, they're 16 ounces apiece, you know.
But they'd eat 2 of them.
Yeah. And one of them come over and he said, "Good job, Cookie." He said, "You break out a chicken on this place, so we'll hang you from that cottonwood tree."
That is a good question. I was going to ask you, man. Them cowboys, they working beef, and so they'll eat beef every day.
Oh yeah, but
or bacon. I guess bacon ain't considered necessarily pork to them.
We change things up at breakfast. You know, you have biscuits and gravy, sourdough biscuits and gravy, sourdough pancakes. You know, cinnamon rolls, breakfast burritos, red-eye gravy and ham, something like that. And at lunch is a lot of casseroles. Chicken fried steak day, maybe. Sometimes we'll do ribs at lunch. But they know anyway now, we're going to have fish on Friday. People that have eaten my cooking before, we're going to have steak night.
You just use it have like a fish fry?
Yeah.
Man, I love it.
And then, but we're going to throw in a surprise every once in a while. So them same old men I went back to for a winter cooking, and when they'd go in November, right after Thanksgiving, we'd come out right before Christmas, cold in the Palo Duro Canyon, and there at South Claude. And I love chicken and dumplings. One of my most favorite meals to cook in the wintertime, you know. And these 2 old men were on this crew. And I'm thinking, we're going to get her done. So put them chicken and dumplings together and just using sourdough biscuit dough as them dumplings, you know, and chunking them over in there. And probably had, I don't know, like 4 whole chickens in this dumpling mix because they feeding 15 kids, 15 people. And we got up there and we blessed it. I said, "There it is, fellers." I said, "It's some best eating you'll ever have." And they're always proper. They let the 2 old men go first every time that there's ever there because they're the oldest, you know.
But knowing probably these 2 old men was going to be the ones. Yeah.
He took the lid off that pot and he looked in there and he heard him turn around that other and he said, "I think he's lost his damn mind." He said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "I think it's chicken." So that old man just throwed that plate down on the ground and he looked at me and he said, "By God, boy," he said, "didn't we tell you we didn't eat chicken last time you was here?" I said, "Them's hybrid quail. Caught them in the quail trap today here. By God, we love some quail." That'll be all. And they cleaned the pot out.
They wore it out.
Yeah,
you just had to change their perspective.
Oh, yeah. And people, I don't think are near like it used to be, die hard, this, that, and the other, you know. I love beef. I love pork. I love wild game. I don't love tofu.
Me either.
One of my favorite foods that probably shocks a lot of people, and it's something I don't have to cook, and you don't require fire, and that is sushi.
Yeah, I didn't grow up eating sushi, but man, when I got me some, I was like, man, that ain't bad.
Yeah, Shannon asked me one time, she said, "You ever have any sushi?" I said, "Had some at a truck stop in Reno, Nevada," and she said, "That ain't where you get it."
That ain't where you get it.
But we even make some on occasion now.
Yeah.
You know, but always looked at a recipe as like it was a roadmap. You could sort of follow it along here, or you could change this, or you could change that. Make it like you want to be, you know?
Right.
In all 3 of our cookbooks that are out, there's 90 to 100 recipes in each book, and all of them are different, but it's a guideline. You don't want to put that in there? Put something else in there. You ain't gonna hurt my feelings.
Whatever to your taste.
Yeah.
Speaking of recipes and stuff, you mentioned red-eye gravy a couple times.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, my grandmama would always make red-eye gravy. And explain to people what red-eye gravy is that don't know.
Well, I think back then, too, people cured their own hams out, you know, on pork, and you had a better grease content, better fat taste to me than
the meat itself, that the bacon and or the
you
sausage.
Throw a big old thick piece of cured ham in there, had a rind on it like this, that old fat grease would render down in there, you know, and then you just take that coffee, pour it in there, get you a little flour, make your roux, give it up. But, you know, Andrew Jackson was really the man that they claimed sort of his cook started red-eye gravy.
I be dog.
He come in and Andrew had a little too much to drink the night before in camp. And the cook looked at him and he said, "Man, your eyes is so red, I don't think I can cover them up with white gravy." So he made some red-eye gravy, just coffee, flour, either like salt pork grease or whatever you had left, you know. But I've made it quite a bit, and I've served it different places. But to me, if you were sort of raised on it, it's the best thing in the world.
Yes.
But people that are new to it, they don't understand it.
I've noticed that. I've never made it. I've never made it in camp, and obviously it's a simple gravy.
Oh, yeah.
I've often wondered, like, I wonder if they use this because they didn't have some milk or didn't.
Oh, yeah, probably so.
Like, it's just simple. We got a pot of coffee. We done percolated or brewed some coffee. But I remember obviously growing up in the South, almost every meal in the South, we had grits, and I never get. That was my favorite thing. My grandma would make fry us up a couple eggs and some grits and bacon and that red eye gravy over your grits. Oh man, it was life changing.
When our first cookbook come out, we had to go to New York City, and we was doing different deals in the city, but this one was for the New York Women's Culinary Association, which I didn't even know how to spell culinary.
Right.
You know, so we did chicken fried steak, mashed potatoes, hominy green chili casserole, bread pudding with a whiskey cream sauce, and we made gravy. And I had a 20-inch skillet there, and it's plumb full of white gravy. You know, one of these ladies come through, and they all got on these little chef coats, you know, and everything. It says chef so-and-so. And this lady stopped, and she said, the white sauce at the end of the table.
The white sauce?
I said, excuse me, ma'am, the white sauce at the end of the table. I said, I don't reckon we got none, ma'am. And she looked at me and she said, the big skillet with the white sauce.
With the white sauce.
I said, that's gravy, ma'am. That's what that is. It's not a sauce, it's a gravy. She said, what do you put it on? I said, everything you got, ma'am. I even said, put some in your purse, take it home with you. I said, it's the best thing you'll ever find out. They knew brown gravy, but they'd never had white gravy, you know. And I'd say, ma'am, gravy is its own food group. I said, you can put gravy on everything in the world. It goes with ice cream. It goes with everything. And people say, what's the recipe? I said, grease, flour, canned milk, water, whole milk, whatever you got. Coffee. I said, it's gravy.
Just blows people's mind, ain't it?
Oh, y'all white gravy people down here, aren't you?
Oh, we white gravy. I would say we way more white gravy than brown gravy. Yeah. Red eye gravy's big down here. But you're exactly right. And it's funny. I've always thought, too, it seemed like some of the best foods were made in that poverty time. Yeah. Like all we got is a little flour and a little bit of goat's milk or something. Maybe I can. And you ain't gonna just throw away that bacon grease.
No.
That's something that might be beneficial to live.
Oh, yes.
And so you make something called a gravy, and then you put it on an old biscuit, because I'm convinced probably them old biscuits, they probably were tougher and harder, and maybe not the best flour in the world, but I just love that. And speaking of that, because I know we've been talking a while, but talking about the Dutch ovens, man, what's the simplest way? And I think there's a lot of people just listen like, oh man, they know exactly what you're talking about. But it was only a handful of years ago that I remember we was at a tailgate, and a friend of mine, he said, man, I got some Dutch oven cooking, and he had, just like on your show, Cast Iron Cowboy, which I would recommend anybody that hears this podcast, go and check out Kent's show if you hadn't already seen it. Follow him on Instagram and stuff. Where can people follow you on Instagram? Is it Cast Iron Cowboy?
No, just Cowboy Kent Rollins on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, any of that. And then on the outdoor channel, it's just the Cast Iron Cowboy.
Right. Okay. Well, you got to watch it, because it's all kind of, it looks, what makes it complicated to me, the way y'all cook, is just the elements you're having to cook in. Yeah. You're having to burn down fire. You're having these rudimentary. It's like going back into the 40s and 50s, the way you're having to cook. Obviously, there ain't no microwave out there on the trail.
I hope not.
Yeah, exactly. And so, but when I think back, some of these best meals were always the simplest, you know. And I've always thought too, talking about sushi, that was a hungry man ate a piece of raw fish first time, and like, wait a minute, time.
Yeah.
Or escargot. I always thought escargot could not have been invented by a rich, whatever millionaire king or queen. That was some broke dude. Like, man, looking at them snails, like, man,
that's gravy today, right?
I'm hungry. You gonna go first? I'm gonna go first, and then somehow become a delicatessen or whatever. But I always laugh. But some of the stuff that's the best are just
it's simple.
Simple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We got an apron, and it says on there, you can't get full on fancy. And it's not,
I love that.
and it's not just about food.
Yeah.
You can fancy up something. I mean, when I was on Food Network one time, Chop Grill Masters, and they took 16 contestants from across the United States. 15 of them were chefs, and then they took one cowboy. Because it was filmed at where they used to film the old Western show High Chaparral.
Oh, yeah.
So they wanted a cowboy persona to be there, They didn't think I'd last long, End up going to the finals, And I told people, I said, you just do what you can do. Life is simple. And this judge looked at me and he said, the show was chopped. You didn't know what was in these baskets, but you had to cook it, You'd have like 15 minutes for the appetizer, 30 minutes for the main dish, and 30 minutes for dessert. And he'd say, no matter what we throw at you in that basket, and I know you've never seen it in your life, you just cook it. I said, because I make it simple. I said, y'all have complicated life really bad with food. I said, and you think food has to be dressed up for people to eat it. I said, where I come from, if your food is good, they'll eat it out of a hubcap. They'll eat it off a shingle. They'll even pick it out of the gravel to eat it if it's good. I said, so why do you want to complicate it? And
That's
I think
right.
if we can keep it that way to where you don't have to be fancy to fulfill everything you have in your life. Just be happy. And that's the biggest thing.
I think you're exactly right. I remember even eating bread, and it ain't as common as it used to be, but I remember, especially my grandma, my mom did it, but she would always make a bunch of biscuits. And I remember she'd throw them in, it'd be like a Tupperware bowl, and put a towel, like almost just a towel or some kind of dishcloth, and throw all the biscuit in and cover that up and kind of kept the biscuits warm and moist. And brother, when you reached up in there and grabbed you a biscuit, you talking about happy. It wasn't nothing to it. It was a plastic bowl. I mean, it literally was nothing in presentation. But man, when your hand went in that biscuit bowl,
you knew
happiness
what was
come out. That's exactly right.
I think back to all them childhood memories, and my mother loved to cook. She was, bless her heart, God rest her soul, when they were young, they were so poor, they finally moved to Amarillo, Texas. And they said to go to school here in the Amarillo area, you must have shoes. And she thought, I'm going to get a pair of shoes finally. She didn't get no shoes, and she didn't go to school.
Holy cow.
And she always told me that story. She said, I'm not telling you just because I want to make you know that we was poor, but sometimes in life, you don't get exactly what you want for another reason, thinking, I'm going to get some shoes so I can go to school. She says, just like cooking. You may not really like what you're cooking, but this is what these people want, so you're going to cook it for them.
That's right.
And but she'd tell me all the time, she said, you cook what you love for the ones you love. And she said, use your hands. They're an extension of your heart. She said, I want people to know it.
Wow.
And I would tell Shannon sometime, I'd say, because I've made bread forever, and I'd say, I don't really go by a recipe when I'm making like biscuits. I go by the way the dough feels, how
when you're kneading it up a little bit,
And I said, that way I know it's going to be good. And she said, I follow a recipe. And she used to buy the book. I mean, she'd lay one out there and measure it, rake it off with a knife, She'd see me reaching her 3 hands and just go to throwing stuff in there, But now she's got so comfortable in baking, and whether it's inside or outside, that she just does it. But people, I want people to know cooking ain't that hard. It's not rocket science work. I'd never figured out if it had to have a degree in chemistry or physics or astrology, If you'll put what you love to cook for someone you love to eat it with, your heart's got the perfect recipe. It'll be a success.
That's so much. When we first sat down, you said, Michael, I think we ain't met, but I feel like we got a lot in common. Even that sentiment, I believe the same thing. Very rarely in a profession, I feel comfortable saying you would not want to be labeled as a professional, a cook, or even a chef. You're just a cowboy cook, cast iron cowboy. I think that describes who you feel comfortable with. And you just said, I don't think cooking's hard. Well, I think anybody probably come up and after eat food like, oh, God, man, I wish I could cook like this. I've always had a strong passion to say hunting ain't hard. In reality, I guess, if we look past, cooking could be difficult, or if you're trying to figure out, is it 15 or 20, 25? But I guarantee you, when you pull up at Kent Rollins in Shannon's camp, you know, yeah, 3 or 4 or 5 more heads. Everybody's you might be like, we're gonna eat it all, but everybody gets a helping, and most time they come back around. But I think that's another thing I've noticed in successful people. What they do at a high level, they're always trying to say, you too can do it.
Oh, yeah.
Where there's a lot of people that are arrogant that get to the point to where only me, I'm the best hunter, I'm the best cook, nobody can do what I do, nobody shoots the big bucks like me, nobody can shoot this bow and arrow. And I catch myself, and I find it very apparent in you, soon as I do something that does impress myself. I'm not saying I don't impress myself. I every once in a while pull out my bow and I'll be shooting out in the lodge at 85 yards or 90 yards and be like, is anybody seeing this? You know, where is Cohen Stone, our producer? He is missing this. But immediately I'm thinking, man, if I can do this, how good have these bows gotten that I can do this? Man, I bet you I can get somebody else shooting this good. If I can do it, I know somebody else can. And I don't know why that... I don't know what that is. I don't know if it's humility. I don't know if it's good Lord. I don't know what it is. And so, I don't know. The more I find myself doing something, for lack of better words, impress myself, I can feel this in you. It don't make me arrogant. It brings humility more. Yeah. Because I'm thinking, ain't no way. Ain't no way I'm supposed to be able. This don't make no sense. This gets back to simple. I
remember being horseback, and we were all just leaning sort of on the horn, watching these cattle go by, you know, and this kid rode up there and he's talking to this old man. He said, I can do this, and I can do this, and I can do this, and I can do this. And he just kept on in his ear, just yapping, you know. I roped this, I roped that, I roped that. He finally turned around and looked at him. He said, out here, son, he said, we don't tell people what we can do. We show them what we can do.
There you go.
He said, I'm finna show you something. He said, what's that? He said, I'm going to show you the tailgates of your pickup going across that cattle guard by. He fired.
Get out of here. He was in there, old cocky. Ain't nobody doing it.
Yeah.
And he realized real quick he's doing something that everybody on this on this team can do, you know.
You know, I've never wanted to be, sure, take pride in what I do, but I don't want to be boastful.
Right.
I'm not going to go up to somebody and say, you know, I'm a whole lot better cook than you are. I ain't never burnt nothing in my life. And I've had people that's come to me and told me that. I'm a better Dutch oven cook than you because I've never burnt nothing in my life. And I said, because you ain't cooked long enough. You will eventually burn it. I burned something.
That's exactly right. Yeah. I find some of the same parallels, like anytime you post something, and I'm sure it's the same in your world. You know, I've watched a lot of your YouTube stuff. I've never went through and read a lot of the comments. But no matter what you do, like I can do a video on quartering up a deer. Well, I've hundreds and hundreds I've broke down. Elk, I don't know. I was adding up the other day. I think I'm in the 30s on elk that I've personally shot. But on top of that, being with buddies. So obviously we broke down a lot of different elk, quartered them up on the mountain. Some we've been lucky to be able to get there and winch them up on the back of a, old Kawasaki or a trailer or something. But more than I can think, we've had to cut up and pack out. And so obviously you find ways that work for you. But I'm always amazed at the people when you try to say, I'm not saying I'm the best, but here's how I do it. In your case, could be Dutch oven or making some biscuits. And like, well, you ain't, and that's what hits me the same way. It's like, well, they ain't done it. They ain't cooked for 30 cowboys every night. They would probably not do it this way. Or even shots. Like every once in a while I'll take a shot and people's like, you should have never took that shot. Well, the deer's on my wall and in my kid's belly at this point, and I'm thinking, well, maybe you've never been in a position to have that shot.
That's what we're saying. You got that loop, throw it.
Are you going to throw it?
Yeah.
Like, why are you going to be mad at me that I threw the loop?
Yeah.
And it's like maybe, and I think I've once I started thinking hard on it and realizing, I think they ain't mad at really me taking the shot or the way I quartered up. I think they're more frustrated at the fact that maybe they never did take the shot.
Yeah.
And they're frustrated that Are you mad at me for taking the shot and being successful? Are you mad at yourself because you're saying you should never take that shot? Are you telling me, or are you reminding yourself of the shot you didn't take? I don't know. I just think about that kind of stuff now.
Yeah,
sometimes.
I hear you. I mean, been on YouTube a long time. You know, I try to answer as many comments as I can every day if I'm able. Get up 4:30 in the morning. That's usually first thing. It's open my laptop, you know. And sometimes you got to be thick-skinned.
You do.
And
Yeah.
Our fans take care of them now. I don't even worry about them anymore. One year in June, been 4 or 5 years ago, July it was, me and Shannon filmed 2 or 3 days every day in the summer. Miserable, burnout, hot. Bertha, that old wood stove, I hate her in the summer. You know,
Boy,
she's a good girl.
It's already 100 degrees.
Yeah. And come in that evening in which we shoot off. Everything's on an iPhone. She does all the editing. About 11 o'clock that night, I told her, I said, I am burnt out. I know you're tired of looking at me in real life and on here too. I said, so let's take 2 or 3 days off and just not film. She said, all right. Next morning, 4:30, get up, open that laptop computer. First comment. Good morning, Mr. Rollins. This is Lance Corporal Cody Childers, currently stationed in Afghanistan. Me and 7 buddies of mine did something today that wasn't the most pleasing thing in the world, but then we gathered around this laptop computer and you made us feel like we were home. Please don't quit what you're doing. You make a difference. God bless you. Went in there, woke Shan up 5:30. I said, come on, sugar. We got to film. Them guys are counting on it. 3 weeks later, I get a call from his mother. We lost Cody to an IED. The flag that we flew over his service in Washington, D.C., he wanted you to have.
Holy
I don't
cow.
tell people that story to make you sad. I tell you that story. You all can make a difference in someone's life if you just make the effort.
Wow.
Don't be afraid to sit. Don't be that person that sits back and says, no, I can't get to the front of the line. I can't do that. I don't want to climb that tree to where I have a better shot on this side. That tree, it's too far up there. Too many branches in the way, you know. I can't lift that Dutch oven. It weighs 60 pounds. You put all them steaks in there, I sure can't lift it. Can't never did nothing.
Never did nothing.
No. And I will. I try. And you just got to have heart and soul. And that's, for anybody listening, anybody watching, you're not alone.
No.
Me and you with them.
100%.
Yeah. God is with you.
And wanting to see success.
That's right.
Wanting to see success that's another thing I've noticed, man. Always put you around the people that are happy when you do succeed in a goal. You'll find some people you'll think you're friends, but when you do succeed, they're almost aggravated.
Oh yeah.
And you're exactly right too in that Kent, in that story of that Lance Corporal sending you that message. You almost sometimes feel or don't realize how many people that you can. Again, it's not an arrogant sentiment. It's the fact that you don't realize who's watching you.
Yeah.
I catch it all the time with my kids. You know, there's something I'll say and I can fly off the handle, or maybe I say something that's off color that I shouldn't have said, and then you realize you got little ears.
Oh, yeah.
They're paying attention.
Yeah.
They're paying attention. You know, like the other day, it's something that, man, it hit me hard. Just this simple. My littlest boy, he had this little old Eli Tomac little motorcycle, one of the motocross bikes. Well, it was broken. He said, Dad, my shock done broke off this thing, you know. And so anyway, I took a little, I think it was E6000. It took me a little while, and I got to mess with that thing. I said, wait, I don't think I can fix it. And anyway, I messed around, and sitting there and got it working. He said, Dad, I paid attention. You can fix anything. And dude, I can't. I'm not a mechanic. I'm not good at fixing stuff, in my opinion. But in his little old eyes, just little things, his bicycle, his chain, his dirt bike, he putting a muffler on it. And he's like, Dad, he said, man, you think we can do this? Yeah, I bet you we can. We'll go down there and do something. Dad, and when he told me that, I'm telling you right now, it's kind of like that message. It's like this little old boy's been watching me.
Oh, yeah.
He, in his mind, he thinks old daddy can do anything. Yeah. And I think that we all got a lot of people looking at us, and you might think that you're not somebody's hero, but you are.
Yeah.
Even some people and men and women that just feel like they don't have no purpose. Somebody is looking at your every move and hinging on what you do. And it took me a while to realize that type stuff.
Yeah, I get aggravated at some people because they try to make it something it's not.
Yeah.
This lady told me the other day, she said, since you've become a celebrity and you're famous now. I said, hold on, ma'am.
Yeah.
I said, we need to back up. And she said, what are you talking about? I said, first of all, if I'm important to God, I'm famous to my wife, and a celebrity to my dogs. I said, and that's because I feed them every day. I said, I guess I'm all right. But I said, I will never be a chef. I will never be a celebrity, and I will never be famous. I said, and a guy asked me on an airplane one time, he was a philosophy student having to do this final exam, and he had to interview somebody. And why he picked me, I don't know. It was in Kamloops, British Columbia. And I said, the first question he asked me was, when you die, what do you want on your headstone? I said, nothing. He said, why? I said, why will you want people to know about you when you're dead? Make a difference in your life while you're alive.
Great sentiment.
And he looked at me and he said, so I can write that down? I said, I don't care. I said, but don't put nothing on your tombstone. Well, what if your family wants you to know? I said, if your family cared about you, they'd know long before that day come along, brother.
That's right. Yeah, that's such amazing. I mean, that gets almost into cowboy poetry, and I think that'd be something fun to do. That'd be fun, Kent, if you can think of would you be comfortable giving us a little cowboy poetry? Or
well,
is there, I mean, obviously, we kind of this whole conversation is cowboy poetry, really.
I'll do one that, this was something, when my dad passed away, he was a hero. We worked together side by side. He went through cancer 3 times. Went from a man that weighed 220, chemo killed him when he was 110 pounds, One of these, you just seen it happen through years. And I couldn't talk to anybody about it. And I was mad at God. Mm-hmm. And finally, God, he nearly struck me in the head with a lightning bolt, knocked me on the ground, and told me, he said, you'll pay attention now, young fella, okay? And so I wrote this the night he died. He is covered all with sweat as I tied my old horse there in the shade. He said, an old horse that'll stand for more than 5 minutes. He said, I reckon there ain't never been one made. He wore an old ragged pair of leggings, and his hands were calloused. And his limbs, let me back up on that, Mike, because I done left out a whole verse. You ever get that way?
All the time, all the time.
He is covered all with sweat as I tied my old horse there in the shade. He said, an old horse that'll stand still for more than 5 minutes, there ain't never been one made. His old hands were hard and calloused, hung off like 2 limbs on a giant oak tree. He wore an old pair of leggings that were just scratched up leather that hung right below his knee. He said, you reckon you could hold this old feller? He seems to have a lot of trouble standing still. Why, you'd think after 45 years of this, I'd quit. Let that old horse's leg down, had my fill. Well, he went to his anvil to shape a shoe. He said, sometimes in life we've got to all have a little adjusting to keep us straight, to keep us true. He said, trimming and shoeing these old horses, it's sort of like dealing with life. Nobody said it was going to be easy, but if you'll do it with pride and honesty, you can get through the times of trouble and strife. Well, he nailed that shoe on pretty quick. He never missed his aim. He said sometimes in life you've really got to struggle if there's going to be any kind of gain. By now his shirt was saltered down, soaked by the summer sun, and my old horse was finished. His trimming, it was all done. I thanked him for his story, and I paid him for his time. As I was riding away, I could hear his old anvil ringing, making a perfect chime. Well, there ain't a day that went by that I didn't think of him and his advice, and usually I'd stop and see him every week, sometimes more than twice. But now the old horses, they ain't lined up no more. His leggings lay there empty, anvil silent. Everything's on the floor. Sometimes I go to wondering. Yeah, it makes me feel sort of sad. But the good Lord needed a farrier, and he got the best one when he hired my dad.
Woo. Man, you trying to water up my eyes right there on that one, Kent. Holy cow.
And that's, I wrote stuff for a long time, and I wouldn't share it to nobody. And I made a D in speech class. Hated to get up in front of people, And Shan come along, and we was catering somewhere every week or on a ranch. And she said, I need you to write these stories down, the ones you tell me. I said, I don't know if I'll write them down. I'll just remember them. She said, no, you need to write them down. She said, in fact, you're going to do a blog. And this was like 15 years ago, 16. I said, what?
What's a blog?
I said, I don't even type. And she said, you're fitting to, you know. But it goes back to what me and you both do and love to do. What you're doing is carrying on a legacy and history also in preserving nature, taking care of wildlife, how to hunt, how to be the best hunter, how to get by in life, feed your family. And when I can pass something on from a story or a poem from one generation to the next, you know, then we're just doing more ministry, more good. And I don't write near as much poetry as I used to, still write a lot of stories. Rhyme and meter, to me, doesn't flow as easy as it used to. I think maybe so it's getting kicked in the back of the head too many times or something. But it's a whole lot easier for me to write a story, you know. And a lot of times we'll just be going somewhere and Shannon will say, tell me something. I say, why are you on here? You know, and she'll say, who was the best person you ever think you met in camp? And I couldn't nail that down.
Yeah.
And I looked at her and I said, God, he'd been in my camp nearly every day, every night.
That's right.
I said, I had an old man that was in camp one time. I said, when you looked at his face, I said it looked like a road map because it was just wrinkles and scars. I said he had his back broke twice, had his legs broke, wagons had flipped over on him. He come from, as an immigrant, to be a wagon cook, to be a cowboy. He got hurt being a cowboy, then he become a cook. You could hear him when he laid down at night, every bone he had cracked. You could hear him when he got up in the morning, moan and groan at 2 o'clock in the morning, thinking he's going to die, you know. But you never heard him complain about the ground being hard, the days being too long, being too hot or too cold. And I never knew what his name was. We just called him Slim.
Wow.
And I know he's passed on. That was 30 years ago, and he's 89 years old then. But I don't know what happened to him, you know, or an old man that I used to sit with on the bench at the feed store that whittled. His name was High Pockets. I don't know his real name. Y'all had them nicknames down here, didn't you?
Yes.
And he'd whittle all the time. And he'd give me a knife, give me a piece of pine. He'd say, you need to whittle. He said, you know God whittles? I said, what? He said, God whittles. He'd been whittling on you for a while now. He said, he whittled me a long time ago. He said, you know, every time he draw that knife, he said, you're just shaping something. He said, God's been drawing that knife across you. He said, he's going to make you into something. He said, just keep your knife sharp.
Holy cow.
And, you know, and them old benches that they sit on, been polished by butts and overalls forever.
Yes.
You know? And I'd think, I even asked people later, 10, 15 years ago, I'd say, did y'all remember that old man, High Pockets? Yeah. What's his name? I don't know. High Pockets.
High Pockets.
Because he wore his overalls stretched up so tight that his butt pockets, the pockets on his butt would be in the middle of his back.
That's why they call him High Pockets. Yeah. Now, how much of this, Kent, did you learn in the university, in college?
Let me see. I went to junior college. Then I went a year and a half at Oklahoma State University. Then I went to the pool hall, got my PhD, you know. Then I remember talking to my dad, and he was telling me about how much had gone wrong, how many cows was out, how many this and that, you know. So I went home, and I went to work. But a wise man once said, manners will open more doors than any education in the world. And my mother said, manners are free, but if you don't use them, they're costly.
Wow.
And she'd make sure, too. But I went to Hard Knocks University, mostly. PhD was a post-hole digger. You know, I can remember doing a show in L.A. a long time ago for the Family Channel called Home and Family with Christina Ferrari. I didn't know who she was. She was married to John DeLorean. She was a cover girl model. Anyway, they had a 2-hour show, and there was a big name star. Then there was a cooking segment, a fitness segment, a garden segment, you know. And the movie Beethoven about the big St. Bernard dog.
Yeah.
That house was where this show was shot at. And So I just sitting in there, this big living room, and these two guys come in there, and I guess they're the fitness guys. And I got on the little spandex, everything. One of them comes over, and he reached out, and I shake his hand. And I don't like for somebody to give me this fish hand.
Right.
I try to break it if they do. So I just shook his hand normal, Oh, my God, you work out? And I said, you what? Do you work out? I said, yes, sir, every week. Where you work out at? I said, at the river. He said, the river. Yeah. What's the membership? I said, it's free. Free? I said, yeah. He called his buddy over. He said, come here. He said, shake this guy's hand. Well, then I sort of knew, so I just mashed him.
Now you got to get on it, son.
And he said, what kind of equipment you use? I said, use post hole digger. I don't think we know that. I said, tamp bar weighs 96 pounds. Rock chisel weighs 110. I said, post driver weighs 90. We don't have that. And how much, what is the membership? And I said, it's free.
Yeah.
So if we were to come and work out at the river and you have this equipment, it wouldn't cost us nothing. I said, no. Where do we sign up? And I said, you ain't gonna make it, brother. I promise. You ain't gonna make it. But
you're also good at it. So matter of fact, you come to this gym, they'll pay you minimum wage to use this equipment.
My oldest brother, one of the best horse trainers there was, starting 2-year-old colts, had a lot of cutting horse futurity champions that he trained, or he broke, I should put it that way. My middle brother is Dr. Dale Rollins. He is the quail biologist for nearly everywhere, the quail specialist.
Yeah.
My oldest sister, her and Randy were twins. Cindy was born with cerebral palsy back in 51. And they didn't know what to do with it then. Told my mother, said, she won't live, be 5 or 6 years old. And one doctor said, she's sort of a freak. Daddy told me years later, he said, God gives special children special people. And we buried Cindy 4 years ago. She was 70, I think. So education is out there in my family. My mother didn't go to school. She finally did get sort of a GED later in life. My dad was graduated, went to the Army, come back. My brother, that is the doctor, me and Randy we'd be down on horseback when it'd be really cold, he'd be at home studying. And I told Randy one time, I said, you think Dale lazy? He said, no, he's just a lot smarter than we are. And I said, yeah, I see that now, But Hard Knocks is the best thing ever, I think.
I agree.
It's taught me so much. I mean, you touch something and it's hot, you tend not to touch it too many times.
You learn.
Yeah.
It's education.
Yeah.
Kent, you don't even know what a joy. Obviously I was a fan before you got here of what you stand for and what you do. And I always love to sit down and talk with people. And I think that's so cool with these podcasts because you can't fake sincerity. You can't fake things. Yeah. And one thing neither one of you and I are actors. Yeah. I mean, I've always thought it'd be fun to try to be in a movie, but I would have to just play possibly the uneducated redneck who just learned from the school of hard knocks. And
just give me one line.
Yeah. Like, what would you play, Kent? I play the guy that lived in the country as a cowboy. Like, why? Because I know that one. I mean, that's me. But it's just so refreshing once again to talk to a man who's a man's man, that's full of humility, who understands the Lord. Also, the fact when you think about the education and you see so many people say, oh man, you got to go to the university to get your education. And I'm thinking, man, there's so many places to learn. Yep. You can learn standing beside a brick mason, mix and mortar. I asked a man one time in a business meeting, I was getting uncomfortable. And I remember, I've said this story a couple of times, but I remember I just didn't trust a guy. And he was pushing me into a deal that I didn't feel was fair. Yeah. And I asked him, I said, I got a question for you. I said, you've asked me a lot of questions and talking over my head and this business stuff. and rightly so. I don't know some of this terminology at the time. I didn't know what EBITDA was and margins and, the percentages of this. And if we sell this, you're only going to make 2% margins and our yield is going to be in the gross GDP. And I'm like, what the? And I said, well, I got to ask you a question. I said, do you know what a bull float is? He said, kind of like you was talking about some of your story. He's like, I don't have a clue. And I said, well, I'll be honest with you. I won't trust a man, won't eat a steak and fried chicken and know what a bull float is. Yeah. I said, I think I'm going to say no to this deal. And I remember he said, you can't. And so at the end of the day, you can be as educated and be at every university. You can have a master's degree in biochemistry. But if you don't know that cast iron's hot after it's been on Big Bertha, I don't think you might can send a rocket to the moon. Yeah. But in my mind, I'm happy to come and be educated and have mentors, like you, and be growed up around a lot of men like you that I feel like has taught me a lot of valuable lessons. And I feel like a lot of those lessons could really come to fruition if we do have another Dust Bowl. Oh, yeah. If we were to ever have that grid outage. Yeah. So anybody that's listening, I'd advise you, man, go to Kent Rollins and check out his cooking segments and more than that, like from the poetry to everything y'all do, man. It's just like you said, the moral of the story, keep it simple, stupid. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I don't even, I hate to say the word stupid, but just if you get confused, go simple. Yeah. Yeah.
Simple is always best. And it's easy to spell. It's just got 2 words in it. Simple.
That's exactly right. And obviously too, I mean, we talked a lot about philosophy and life and stuff, but yeah, definitely. Where can people find you? Like the Dutch oven cooking, right. Even some of your recipes. Where can people go and find that?
They can just type in Kent Rollins, go to the website. Cowboy Kent Rollins will get you to our YouTube channel. We have a playlist of so much cast iron, how to take care of it, how to season it. But there's cooking videos. There's every kind of anything in the world that you could want. But it's not just a cooking show. Mm-hmm. There's a little life lesson in there. Yeah. You may see me shed a tear. You might see me dance a little. But mostly we just have a good time. And it's been my pleasure, Michael, you're just my kind of people. I don't know why we ain't been together before now, because me and you could have probably solved all the world's problems by now.
You ain't lying. I'd probably be a little chubbier if I'd been around you more, especially around some of them elk camps with you cooking like that. But same here, Ken. Yeah. I can't thank you enough for coming. And I don't know, man. I hope we can share a camp together. I'd love to go hunting, hang out with you, and get some pointers and stuff. And so I don't know, man. It's been better than even I was looking forward to it, but it's been even better having a chance to sit down and meet you and talk to you.
Well, you're good people, my friend.
You too, Kent.
Always look at people the way you look at horses and dogs. Judging by a soft eye and a soft heart, you'll never go wrong.
There you go, man. Last words of knowledge right there from Mr. Kent Rollins. Thank you, Kent, for being here. I appreciate it, buddy.